Boom! Hello and welcome to the Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Byron Rodgers. This podcast is dedicated to the executive protection practitioner, the private security professional. In this podcast, we're going to talk about the mental, emotional, psychological, physiological fitness that goes into being an efficient and effective executive protection agent. Whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're a mom that's looking at how to protect her children, or a father that's focused on how to protect his family, I believe this podcast has something for all of you. We might even get into some tales from the crypt, some true Hollywood stories from time to time. I'm doing this podcast because I feel the reality of this job is simple. If you really want to be good at executive protection, it's more than just a job. It really is a lifestyle. And those of you who've been in the game for any serious amount of time, you already know what I'm saying is true. So if that sounds interesting to you, enjoy the show. Out. Boom! What's up, you guys? Byron Rodgers here, Executive Protection Lifestyle, and I have Chris Sipe here, and it's an honor to have you on here, Chris. How you doing?
Hey, man. Pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me.
That's what's up. Chris, he's doing a lot of things. I met him at this close protection conference. Him and I were working together on, we were on the panel for Outliers, the final panel of the conference. So we got to weigh in with our opinions there and hopefully demonstrate some value. But it was an honor to do that stuff, man.
Yeah, man. It was a great experience, no doubt about it.
Heck yeah. So I wanted to have him on the show because he hit a couple nails right on the head. I know he's got a lot to contribute, and really what I understand he does has a lot of moving parts on an international level. And I just know there's a lot that you guys can really kind of learn and benefit from talking with a gentleman who's doing the things he's doing with the companies and on the level that he's doing them on. So, yeah, man. Chris, tell you where did it all start for you?
Yeah. Truth be told, I think in all honesty, it started on the Yellow Footprints, MCRD San Diego, 2002.
Raw.
I mean, in all fairness to the connection to the EP world, it's that bit of Marine Corps discipline that got transported into my everything.
Heck yeah.
I was in 02 to 06. I was in 03-11. I did 3 tours. I was a 3-5. We went to Fallujah, did all that stuff. And awesome. For me, kind of transitioning out, it was like, what do you do? What is it infantry grunt, take from that experience and moving on to something professional? And right. I mean, my journey was a little bit different.
We're the same generation too, man. So that's
man.
It's rare. I don't see a lot of our guys in that space. At that conference, one of the other guys from my platoon also was one of the big companies, and he was running around there. I was like, yo,
awesome, man.
There's 4 of us. I was like, we're doing good. We're doing
I know, right? It's a little bit different from sitting there, smoking and joking about what you're going to be doing next.
Yeah, or the good old days.
Yeah, tell me about it. So the transition for me was a lot like how do I take these Marine Corps skills? I mean, I was lucky enough to be a squad leader for about a year and a half. And, the best way that I can probably explain it is that your whole sole purpose in life was, the accomplishment of mission. Obviously the troop welfare came second, but honestly, it was taking care of those guys. Every, bone in my body was there to ensure that they got home to their families. And I was very blessed to have that happen. I didn't have anybody get lost. So that was great. So in order to kind of harness that mentality, I mean, and truth be told, what we were doing was a lot of animosity towards a lot of bad people, but it was very defensive. And so the defensive mindset of, the posture in which you're commanding your squad and that of the actions on an objective. And, you're inherently trying to keep your guy safe and then inflict as much, bad juju on the enemy.
And it's default aggressive. Everything's default aggressive. They're firing us. Boom, boom, boom. We just go assault through, attack the attacker, straight into the ambush, and it's
right.
It's cool, man.
In my transition was, I wanted to get into some type of, protective work. I don't know if it was federal law enforcement. I was very lucky to have gone through college prior to going into the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
So how do I use, that thing and then also my experience? And I think EP was something that like kind of marked me, I think, and almost in kind of a way. I'm from Chicago, got out of the military in December, it was November of 2006, snowing back home. And I'm like, well, LA is kind of nice. I think I might just stay. And I did, and I found a great EP company. In fact, two of them. One of the companies is Gavin and Becker and Associates, and the other is Galahad Protective Services. And both companies a little bit cut from the same cloth. Obviously, GDB is a very big company with a lot of fantastic assets, whereas Galahad was a little bit smaller, a little bit more nimble. I had a lot of opportunities right out of the gate. So yeah, I mean that's basically how I got my foot in the door.
That's what's up, man. Man, our stories are so much alike, man. Like,
yeah.
Same here, squad leader, same thing. Like, was like, oh, I'm going to get out. Well, actually, I got really lucky. But because I got picked up by my first security detail 3 months before I got out. Okay. So I was like, when they out process you, you got to go stand post. I was in, like doing like I was like standing post around Horno or whatever, getting processed out, paying dudes to take my post while I ran to details. That's being insane. Like, yo, bro, I'll just drop like because I was balling, for a Marine, Yeah. I was like, dude, I'll just give you like $200, take my post, bro. And they loved me, Yeah. I was in Israel, like, just trying not to freak out while I was going through customs. Like, if they snatch me up in here, I'm done. I'm at the end of my career, and I'm getting in trouble. But man, something you said I think is interesting. You got in bed with two companies right out the gate, and there were differences there. You said that one was more nimble and you had more opportunity quicker. Talk a little bit about that, man, because I think that's something I also experienced. And guys trying to get into this game, that's something to consider.
Yeah. Honestly, the truth was like, oranges to oranges in the sense that both companies were a great decision. I think I went with, like I said, with Galahad, who was, like I said, a little bit lighter as far as opportunity. GDB's got a rhyme and a reason. They've been successful for a lot of great things. I think the idea of, I think their starting process for me, I don't know. It just 2006. It wasn't where I wanted to be. I think it might have been coming out of a like leadership capacity, and then having to kind of more or less have to restart everything. Pay my dues in a different way, which I was totally down with. It just so happened that my personality boded a little bit better for a smaller outfit. So that firm, like I said, had a little bit better opportunities for me, like right out the gate. So I was able to use my personality type, take those leadership skills, get them out there into the field and see how the ramifications of working clients and being on multi-man details. I mean, don't get me wrong. I did not start off solo practitioner for sure. I'll be the first to admit that I had to really gain a real good foothold of proper EP customs and courtesies. Because the truth of the matter is that, in the realm of entertainment is that, you cannot really BS this type of industry, especially if you're working for career clients.
Exactly.
Need security all the time. And,
they know what you're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. You can't fake them. So a lot of my first exposure with this was observing and keeping my mouth shut and keeping my eyes open. A lot of, that boot camp mentality of, just trying to develop those soft skills that I more or less try to make successful in the Marine Corps, transition that into civilian life, and then try to understand what the dichotomy of those two things could possibly be. So essentially, I was taking every job I could possibly find. It was a time where it's like I had to really check my ego. I volunteered for everything and anything under the sun. In fact, one of my first jobs was overwatching a client's construction site up in the hills here in Hollywood. And it was just, basically bones, and it was, construction material. So, theft could be an issue. Yes, of course. And it's something that the owner of the company said, yes, of course, we'll make sure that doesn't happen. And that was my first gig, and I took it pretty serious, and I made it like a defensive position. And it's like zero dark, whatever. And
what you got, it's good that you did. It's good.
Yeah, no, I did. But I realized that no one's coming, no one's out there. I'm checking the rooftops and all that, which is still fine and dandy. Right. But lo and behold, it's like, man, my mentality has to shift very quickly. As my time getting closer to clients and closer to the folks that call the shots and realizing the business aspect of things is that military stuff has its place,
right,
but it doesn't belong here. And because of that, I was able to basically have a quick conversation with myself over time by saying, what I did was great. And I hold very, high allegiance to the things that I did and the guys that I did it with, but it's got to get in the past.
Yeah.
There's
time to evolve.
But you know what I mean? Like they do, but they don't.
But they don't. Don't tell the story again. You told them once.
Right.
That's great.
And even if like they actively ask you about your time, you're like, oh boy, it was great, man. I've served with a lot of great people. And that's it.
Let it be what it is.
Correct.
Don't go into handshaking and, No, I dig it, man. I agree 100%. It was like you kind of have to, you've got to evolve with the game and you've got to keep up with that stuff. And I've seen a lot of good dudes with good hearts, solid guys get left in the dust, because they're not able to do that because they over-identify with that past version of themselves. And so they don't end up evolving. They over-identify. And for them, that's the most amazing thing they've ever done in their life. And for them, they're insecure about maybe ever doing anything. We'll probably never do things like the things we did. You know what I mean?
Tell me about it.
I'm not trying to do this. It's like trying to have the same kid twice. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to have the same kid twice. I'm creating more new, amazing things, hopefully, now that are making the present moment exciting. I think that's not even EPL. That's just that's heavy, good transition stuff. And then also on the smaller companies and larger companies, guys, when you're getting out, I talk about chasing the pager and I talk about getting on with a number of different companies. And this kind of lends more validity to that. And then also, man, one of the good things about smaller companies is if you're one of the good dudes, you can shine a lot quicker there and you can get in those good spots and gain some seniority quicker, which kind of goes without saying. But no, that was a good tactic I used as well.
I only want to echo one bit about that is that your reputation is your calling card.
Yeah, for real.
And I don't know how many guys you've had or gals on the show or even just folks in the industry say you're only as good as your last gig.
Yep.
And listen, it's who you cohabitate with. It's, are you able to be a function of the service that you're being asked to do on this job?
Yeah.
And not trying to be something that you're really not. And, being humble enough to say you know what, I don't understand or I don't get why you're doing such a thing.
Yep.
And a lot of times the leaders of the detail will be like, hey, yeah, awesome. Thanks for that question. I'll definitely, take a little bit more time to work with you on that until you get to that space where you're actually complimenting, a detail leader. Like if they put you in an advanced position and you're like, hey, sir, or hey, whatever the detail leader's situation is and hey, so this is what we're going to be taking a look at. And then all of a sudden you become reliable and then he wants you on more jobs or she wants you on more jobs. And if you're a freelance guy, hey man, there's nothing better than that. Being able to be reliable, that hired gun, if you want to call it, until you get your position where, you're able to call a lot of great shots.
Exactly. And nowadays, bro, it's so easy to stand out. All you got to do is show up. Not all you got to do, but man,
almost.
You can kill so many people. My mindset's not one of competition with anyone other than myself.
Right.
But however, I'm not very rarely am I even noticing other people because I'm so busy in the mirror, but you can separate yourself just by show up on time. You know what I'm saying? Give someone a proper handshake. I don't know, enunciate, just dress nice. There's just so many little things you can do.
Yeah.
You basically do everything your dad told you to do, hopefully, that you thought was stupid. Yeah. You're killing me.
Yeah, in more to the point of military discipline, it's or those things you were instilled. Absolutely. It's brilliance in the basics, no matter where you are in what industry, and reliability is the stamp of approval. If you can show up on time, have a little bit of enthusiasm, have a suit that fits you and asking questions and then following up afterwards and being that person that can be relied upon. So you make a lot of great points there, man, for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then also I don't know about you, but the whole asking questions, every time I get to a new detail, it's straight up you're starting from, the questions you ask, I think illustrate your intelligence more than anything.
Yep.
And there's nothing worse than a guy getting to a new detail who acts like he already knows everything.
No doubt about it.
Because on a new detail, there's tripwires and there's all that stuff, man.
Yep.
And you don't know the nuances. And so you're left seat, right seat, and you're acting like you know the game. You're setting yourself up for disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, my take on that bit is that like there's a philosophical issue with a lot of gents or gals that come into this line of work with the misconceptions of what it is they're actually meaning to do.
Yeah.
And, it's like, even if so a lot of worlds don't work the same way. Some guys are just kind of blindly thrown into jobs and they're like, all right, we're going to make this work. Let's go and do it. And afterwards you're like, boy, was that a pain in the ass? Or, man, that was a great experience, ...
Yeah.
But my thing is like, for the guys and girls out there that are trying to like break into the industry, essentially, it's like, be someone there that it's meant to fulfill the role. Full stop. And then let your personality out afterwards of saying, thank you very much for that opportunity. Can we do it again sometime? And then leave it at that. The difference, of course, is that if you come in like a bull in a china shop, acting like you know something, or like, we did this back in the Corps, or, I was in the Corps, and I protected so-and-so. Like, that's all well and good, but do you know who this client is? Do you know what we're doing while we get there? What are our, what are some of our CASEVAC plans?
Do you know who their friends are who are going to shoot you in the face when you try to stop them from getting in the green room?
So like, you make up a good point of, people coming in trying to act as if they know, is kind of like a hindrance until someone, most likely, I'm sure you've had plenty of experiences like this where you're like, you know what, actually, so sorry, that's not what this is. And we might not be able to get to work together again, that type of thing. And it's like, it all can all be very good thing if you just apply Byron's tools for success.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Yo, what do you think was the key component to making your transition from the military into this industry smooth? Successful? Yeah.
So smooth is not the word. I think in all fairness, it was an entirely giant ego check for me. Because you're right. I mean, like off the battlefield, doing badass stuff. Yeah. Into a world of, like high profile, high net worth celebrity protectee that, like I said earlier, like they've been around the block or they're brand new and fresh and don't know any better.
Yeah.
So my transition from military to that world was that I needed desperately to figure out what exactly it was that I was attempting to do and did I really want to do it? Was this something that was meant for me? And luckily, I was always kind of pushed either by mentors or by situations that came up, exposure to clients who had good experience with me, and I got asked back to details. But the resounding kind of feeling was that like I have to start speaking their language, not to be fake or to like act all like, oh, I can speak the lingo or whatever. But it's like, what's their bottom line? What's their intent here? I mean, are we doing production for entertainment, production or publicity? It's like, just standing next to a person ain't going to cut it. You know what I mean? Right. It's like that's not why they've hired you. And as you move up in the world, the financial side gets more and more expensive for them, whether, the studio's paying or whether they're, out of pocket. So, the product in which you need to give is of a very high standard. So it's either shit or get off the pot. Like you either can fake it until you make it, or you fake it and you get fired. So for me, it was like, constantly trying to observe that of my betters, my mentors who I held at a very high standard. Dan Palmer was one of my mentors, Dennis Brigwell, Guillermo Lozano, and a bunch of other guys in the company, not just my company, but others just in the industry as I started to kind of make my own way. No different than any other type of leadership situation. I saw what guys or gals were doing and I emulated it. And the stuff that I didn't like, I scuttled it. And then I started to apply it, and I applied it, and some things were coming back, others were not. And so, as a protector, you get into this mindset of like almost chameleon-like in order to satisfy the situation.
Yeah.
Set up your security protocols, you put them into play, and you continuously build. And at one point, when we called it back in the Marine Corps, it's like the 3-street war. It's like one street, you're, shaking hands. One, you're kind of suspicious of them. And third, you're having a gunfight.
Yeah.
And so for this, my mentality was always like, be able to speak eloquently to the people that are paying your bills, whether it be an executive, a studio head, a publicist, a manager, speak to a fan or speak to paparazzi in a certain situation. And of course, then speaking to a client or a customer. Yeah. And so figuring out how to apply the business acumen for what it is they're trying to accomplish. And then in that same posture and mindset of a protector, where does the security protocol then therein lie? And so for me, the School of Hard Knocks was failing and luckily not getting people into trouble or in harm's way. Exactly. And so for me specifically, it was, these small little incremental wins that, like, let's just say that I did have a failure and failure is a big word, but like a misstep.
Yeah.
I always called, like, putting pennies in the penny jar. I'm like, hey man, I took a couple pennies out tonight. I'm going to double down my effort on this next gig. And that's not going to happen again. You know what I mean? Like, so there's plenty of opportunities to view the transition in a way is to say, like, my experience was prototypical for someone that wanted to basically just succeed and get ahead. I truthfully invested a lot of time and emotion into making sure I got it right. And like you said earlier, asking those questions and being vulnerable enough to, like, if I didn't know it, I'm going to ask. And, and for me in my transition, luckily, coming out of 3 deployments with combat and warfare, also coming out of that as well, contributed to the bumpy road of getting to where I needed to be professionally. But I didn't have mouths to feed back then. I do now. So there's a lot of, like, reasons for me to double down on being a squared away individual. Whereas back then, it could have went left or right at any point in time.
Man, so that was a sophisticated answer, bro. That was really good. But basically it sounds like you were highly inquisitive and malleable, and you focused on just evolving as quickly as you stinking could in order to get this thing right and set up some security for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely right, man. I mean, in the easiest boiled down version of it all, it's like, I have to be able to look out for number one.
Right.
And if I want to do this job correctly and be successful and have others rely on me like I want, then it's show up every day, ready to play, no excuses, even if they suck, even if you've had a bad day at work, if you have a bad day at home. It doesn't matter because the client ultimately doesn't care. They do.
But they don't. And if you make them care, then maybe they should find someone that doesn't need them to care. You know what I mean?
Yes,
like,
for sure.
How much money is my time worth, and how much money is your time worth again? You know what I mean? Like,
not in the same ballpark.
Think about it. You know what I mean? Like, okay. No, man, that's some good gouge. And I experienced the same thing, bro. Like, I remember when I first got to the fleet in the Marine Corps, I was like, what's wrong with these guys? Because I got there and I was like, I had like these senior Marines that were all like, looked like crap. Like, they looked like trash, right? But they just got back from the luge, man. They just got back from Fallujah. And I remember thinking, like, I got my sleeves all rolled up, snapping, popping. I just came out of boot camp. I'm all sharp as a tack, These guys can't even stand in formation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're slouching. They got bad haircuts. I remember thinking, dude, like, these guys are pieces of crap. I got to go to war with these guys. And then, thank God, the other voice in my head was like, yo, shut up.
Right.
And figure out why. Figure out why everything you're seeing. And then, I flash forward, to me coming back. And I'm like, you just learn what's important and what's not. And where to put your energy is really what it is, and you don't know what you don't know. And fortunately, I was able to be like, I get to figure out what I don't know. So then when I got into my first detail and, I just like tripled my pay and I'm like 21. Oh, wow. Like, I didn't have the college, like you had college before the Marine Corps. So you were like the old wise one in the platoon,
I mean, I did get called a couple really,
Yeah.
Well, it's a badge of courage now. I was called professor because I had,
right?
It's like,
yeah,
but I'm the idiot didn't listen to the Marine Corps during wartime, so
right. No, and so I just remember when I got to my first detail being like, one guy pulled me aside and was like, hey bro, if you're not careful, this type of work can wreck you, I remember like, yo, whoa, bro. I'm not in Iraq. I get to shower today.
Yeah.
I got to try not to be fat, and I'm making 3 times what I was making. Yeah. Believe me, homie, it's going to be all right. But then that same thing kicked in and was like, hey, dude, you need to figure out why he's saying what he's saying. And it caused me to really, really focus and evolve at that speed that I needed to. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it. And a lot of guys didn't,
Yeah.
Kind of a side note.
Yeah.
Or a different direction. I know a lot of people have this perspective this kind of like when you tell someone you're in private security, executive protection, first of all, they don't know what you're talking about until you say bodyguard. But when you say something like that, like, you know, this picture, this big dude who protects people pops into their head.
Yeah.
How has that affected your career? You know, like, have you had to overcome that in the mind of clients? Have you had situations where that's been a factor, even in terms of protecting? Like, how? Because you're not really a big dude. You know what I mean? So
definitely not.
How has that played in to the game? Because I'm not that big of a dude either. You know, I'm like, we're both kind of the same height.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of, you know.
The honest to God answer is that I got put through my paces very early on. In fact, I remember a gig that I was an advanced guy. And by the way, sidebar, love advancing. I think it's the best job in all of EP if you can do it.
Yep.
But I was the advanced guy, so I was actually not body man on that gig. And one of the clients made a comment about like not being 6'2", something like that. And bro, by the way,
I got hit with that one. Whatever.
Yeah. And in the immediate kind of situation, because, you know, you're very present, you're being observant and all that. And I just, wow, I took that to heart a little bit too quickly.
Yeah.
Like, you know, she's right and blah, 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 this. And then immediately, like, down on my mind, it's like, bro, it's okay.
Yeah.
But the reality is you're actually on the game field. And it reminded me of the, you know, the man in the arena type of quote and all that. But the truth of the matter is like the client who's paying the bill made a comment to me. You know, they might have made it in kind of like a jokey manner. But at that time, that was kind of like what I'm saying earlier about the ego of it all. It's like, hey, listen, you know, this is a matter of fact. I cannot grow any higher. I can maybe get more, you know, ripped like I used to be.
Yeah.
But that's not going to change. So it was like that first kind of like part of the road that everyone takes in this career is like, you're going to get sniped at. You're going to be second guessed. You know, the physical side of things. It's like, hey, man, just take care of yourself. Be humble enough to be healthy physically and mentally. And then if they want to make a comment, so be it. But you know what the best revenge is? Return business. Yeah. And part of that was like a long-term professional relationship with that client area that it never meant anything after that. You know, they said the thing and I just had to get over myself. That was it. That was it.
They said this, they said the thing. I had to slay dragons in my head. Yeah. And it was like, we were eating sandwiches and then, you know, everything was
all good afterwards. And by the way, it is something that, depending on how kind of internally you were embarrassed you are about a certain thing, but you got to kind of dust off that bit. Like if, you know, you want to get a little bigger, you know, lift weights. If you want to get a little bit faster, you know, hit the track. It's like whatever you got to do to, you know, better yourself.
Yeah.
But the one thing that is all kind of tangible to everyone in the world is that if you don't have the right mindset, you're already out of the game.
Right.
And because I had to get my shit together and get my head screwed on straight, be like, I'm qualified to be here. I'm still learning. You know, you just kind of have to, you know, self-talk your way to back to that space. You're like, all right, cool. Let's get back to what I'm doing here. Situational awareness. How am I going to be able to get through to point A to point B to point B? Okay. Gig's over. Success. Yeah. Mental note. Check. But I can't change my height. Yeah. Oh, well. And if I never see this client again, then I'll just, you know, chalk that one up. And truth be told, like I said, you know, it was a lot of really great business with that person. But then along the way, still kind of like ever so mindful of the other bit, which would be, I would say, the intelligence side. So you talk about like the knuckle dragon security guy that's posting up doors, or, you know, the guy in the movie, you know, because we're not all Denzel with Man on Fire. Sorry, you know, that's just not the world we live in. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some types out there doing that type of work.
Yeah.
But the thing for me was always like, all right, how do I best benefit them? And if I'm getting repeat business and they like the taste in their mouth, then listen, I'm onto something right. So the truth of the matter was that, like, as long as I kept down that path and finding where my left and right limits were, you know what I mean? Like staying on top of that track. And when I lost the path, I got smacked over the head with a bunch of ego trips.
Yeah.
And that, like, you know, those situations that pop up, you just gotta, you know, get back on track. And the way that you do that is a little bit of self-talk and like, yes, I'm meant to be here and this is what I want to be doing, and, you know, try to figure it out.
No, that's solid, dude. I completely agree. And I understand. I've watched some dudes get roasted by some clients, man. I've been roasted. I was on one detail where I think I was literally there because the client knew that he could roast me. and I was cool with it. Like, I was literally the roast guy. Like someone farts in the jet, and he's literally like, Byron, someone farted. I'm like, sorry. Yeah, like, it was me, but all right, cool, sorry, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think like with that, you know, it's kind of like my 2 cents would be like, play to your strengths, you know, like if you're not that big of a dude, you know, get into a martial art, you know, play to your strength, get into something else, you know, that can help validate you. And I think that a lot of guys have really sensitive egos because they're insecure. Naturally, they're insecure because they're holding on to an identity that's in the past, which isn't a solid or a really, really relevant identity. Right. And if you're tying your identity to something that's not relevant, you're going to be insecure. And I think that the biggest cure for that is constantly, I was smashing on this on my Instagram this morning. It felt good. But it's working on yourself. And if you're always working on yourself and you're getting all that feedback loop happening internally every single day by what you're learning, by what you're doing in the gym, what you're doing on the mats, what you're doing in the gloves, and you know who you are, like, I can lift this much weight, I can grapple for this long, you know yourself. When you get that feedback from outside, it's not like earth shattering, you know, it's like, okay, they want me to do this or that. Can I do that? I know I can make the corrections. I know who I am. And this is something that I need to factor in and take a look at. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, man, like, you're right. Like, the client validates our work. You know, and so that return business is the sign and seal of acceptance. You don't spend money on things that you don't value. That's just that. You know what I mean? Like, especially
in that world where, what do you get somebody that has everything?
Yeah,
it's called peace of mind. And if you can materialize peace of mind, you're minted. And then I always say, like, you know, when they sign on to do a gig, if it's a contract or just a word of mouth type of thing, it's like, now they're trusting in me to do a job. Now I'm going to ensure that we see it through the whole way, as far as like the customer service side of things. I mean, you're totally right. It's one of those things where if you're not chipping away each day, you know, you could fall into a really horrible place that you get to this place and you're like, well, I've just now redug myself a hole that I thought I got myself out of.
Yeah.
And by the way, after, you know, watching your IG page, you know, I think you're doing a lot of great stuff for a lot of good people out there. I mean, it's super motivating. And I know that you said about, you know, the dichotomy between discipline and motivation, but shit, man, you can talk.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.
I'm like, yeah, let's go beat up something right now.
That's what's up. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, man. No, that whole kind of knowing who you are piece, man, like, and really the client, letting the client be the filter, you know, but also knowing the value you're bringing to the equation is so big, you know. And a lot of times, you know, it's kind of a weird dichotomy because you're kind of stuck in this, like, you know, or think you know the value that you're bringing to the equation, and the client, maybe they recognize it if you're lucky, maybe they're tolerating you. And so, I mean, I feel like this is just straight off topic, but I feel like part of what our game turns into is like translating our value into things and actions and quantifiable things that the client will appreciate. You know what I mean? But you can't lose yourself. You can't, you know, lose your protection ability. But like, you also have to find ways to demonstrate value to the client in ways that they really, what safety looks like to them. You know,
exactly.
You know, all these things, you know.
Yeah, you bring up an awesome point, because therein lies kind of the fine line.
Kind of, yeah.
So you have this type of this desire to instill some type of protective program that ensures their ability to do their job. I mean, that's essentially why we're out there doing our thing. And there are certain individuals that play well into a very likable personality. And they use that type of thinking that, like, well, I can win over this client in order to get more business. That's not a bad philosophy, but it only has a certain track for only a little while. Because again, to your point, you're an expensive thing. You got to be able to produce, and it's got to be about the job.
Right.
And so, like, a lot of trial and errors and definitely some advisorship from the guys who trained me was that, like, hey, show up, do the thing, go home. If you get called back, awesome. You don't need to speak to them, because there's nothing to talk about unless they engage, and then you defer. So it's like this kind of like back and forth, but And then kind of when I kind of got into a position of help running a business and training guys, it's like, hey, listen, do the job. Be that person that's reliable, but also be yourself. Yeah. But if yourself happens to be someone that's self-serving, it's like, well, you've already counted yourself out again. So riding that line of like, hey, he's a good dude and he's a good, he's a good operator. Hey, that's the best of both worlds. Yeah. Because you can have a real jerk as a colleague. Yeah. Or you can have someone that's super great, but also really terrible at the soft skills, or really I'm sorry, not soft skills, at the hard skills. Yeah. Stuff that's like you need, like always out of position, always having to be told twice, not Rodgering up on radio. Yeah, or like coming at it from like the wrong perspective.
Yeah, like what were you thought that was a good idea before you did that?
Yeah. And so like you work with a lot of interesting folks that kind of get you to this point where it's like, all right, well, this guy has a real problem. This gal has a problem with self-identity. Because they're projecting this extra stuff. I need to be the first person to the door to open it up. I need to be the first person in the room, and I've got to, clear this room like I'm clearing out like a hostile area. It's like, no, you don't. You have to be reliable. You have to like instill some type of like I said, reliability, so that the client knows like each action is for a reason, as opposed to you grandstanding or making it known that like, you're the cool dude behind the shades because you're standing next to so-and-so, because they don't tolerate that. Because most likely they're just like, oh man, I can't wait till this guy's out of here.
Or get out of here because this guy, no, I agree, man. So what would you say executive protection means to you? One of my favorite questions to ask, man.
Yeah, no, it's such a long answer, but I can probably sum it up with like,
we got time, bro.
Yeah, because I get long-winded about stuff. No, I mean, truth of the matter is that for me now, it's about dedication to service. I think an unparalleled ability to problem solve and to have situational awareness of not just about threats and the possibilities of the what ifs. It's that you try to instill this level of comfort that allows them to do what it is that they're meant to be doing. Yeah. So like for me on the entertainment side, especially on the publicity side, is that a little bit of exposure goes a long way by way of publicity. That's why you're there. So if you create this air of like, well, we need to always use back of the house and we always need to have this type of contingency planning and a limited amount of exposure, it's like, well, then the client doesn't get to be in front of the people who are going to report that this is a good movie, or they're not meeting the correct people, or you're basically positioning yourself as to say like, well, is there a threat in this room? Why are you so close to the client? Right. So this mentality of customer service by ways that just allowing them to move freely. So you talk about like a duck on water where it's all cool and collective up topside, and then below, your feet are moving at the cyclic rate. But the truth of the matter is it goes back to the basics of having a fantastic advance, knocking out 95% of your administrative things to get you in position to actually provide body coverage. And when you're actually on site, what does it mean to do what it is that you're doing by way of saying like, do you know who you're speaking to when you ask for a certain favor, like using a side door or perhaps a back of the house or an elevator, or something to say like, you need certain people to allow you to get certain types of access. Yeah. So are you going to be that guy or gal that comes in and be like, yo, I need this now? And they're like, who are you and why are you
Why are you here? Like, why do you think you're so cool right now?
Exactly. And so that comes from having a brilliance in the basics, which is, having a fantastic advance, like I said. But think of it like this, executive protection is such an umbrella statement. I always kind of liken it to what's the most important thing happening right now and how am I going to execute it to the best of my ability? Yeah. Right now, am I having a conversation about the ways of the world? Or am I having a conversation about why I believe that the client shouldn't go to a location for lunch because there's a planned protest? Yeah. And I kind of liken it back to the 3 Street War, where it's like, I have to be able to be chameleon in such a way as to not freak somebody out, but at the same time, give them the situation at hand. So like in executive protection, I always like to institute, big boy rules, no matter how hard it hurts. And so like, for instance, they're adults. And they can take it. And if they can't take it, that's not on me. That's on them.
Yes. Burn them at the stakes anyway.
Yeah. But, I know. But at the end of the day, if you're running a business, you sometimes have to come to this conclusion like,
considerations,
I have to massage this situation to come like, hey, listen, I really know that you want to accomplish this. You get into this wording of things. And I know I'm going off track about what EP is.
No, flow
but
with it, man. It's cool.
You know what I mean? It's like this whole package deal because the executive protection could be very cut and dry of running an itinerary, of doing travel advisories and, having an advanced guy in another foreign country do it. So you're managing from a distance. Yeah. Or, it's, doing residential security, ensuring that the guys and gals there running that detail is falling in line with the protective detail that's outside. I always fall back to, it's like, are you delivering what it is that they're asking for? Not out of some template, not out of something that, like you learn in the school, which by the way, does get a lot of people very, very far in this line of work. Yeah. But it's the real understanding of like who your client is. And I remember you asked the question to Elijah Shaw about something about business practices. And he had a phone call with the prospective client. He's like, my old life, I would have said, yeah, I can do that. But in my more mature, I'm a business owner, failed a bunch of times to get to this point. It's like, I'm not your guy, or my company's not for you. And having that legit candor to say like, my services might not be what it's worth. I'm happy to give you a freebie, or I'm happy to go out and do a site assessment, or I'm happy to do an advance for you, or maybe just do this one for free. And you let me know what you think. Yeah. But EP comes at the cost of like, you can't just go in with this mentality of like, I know everything what's best for the client. It's not, in my experience, and again, and if people have been doing the math, I've only been doing it for 13 years. Yeah. The truth of the matter is that like the trial and error, especially on the entertainment side, is that EP isn't just one thing. It's many things. It's
so many things.
Walking their dog as to not expose them to undue issues. Happy to walk the dog. It's going in and grabbing coffee with them while they sit in the car with the driver. Yeah. They don't have to get exposed. Right. And is that EP? I don't know. It sounds a lot like customer service than is a security protocol. Yeah. Because the security protocol is like, well, they're in an enclosed armored vehicle. I think for that 5 minutes, unless the situation is dire.
Yeah, unless it's broken arrow,
Yeah.
Yeah, no. That's what's up, man. That's a lot to think about. Now, am I doing what, So like, kind of distilling that, like, am I doing what, like the most like effective thing that needs to be done to keep my client safe right now relative to what's going on, I think that's really the game, because sometimes you're right. That's going to get some stink being a coffee getter, and sometimes it's putting the car seat in the car. And sometimes it is covering your client through a crowd that got the drop on you on your way to the mix, or moving through a venue really fast, or manning the rails around the limo in order to, get through something. So that's that. No, that's a real big, good answer, man. If you were going to boil it down to, let's see, 3 principles that have made your career more successful, 3 specific, I didn't think of what my 3 principles would be.
The table's on you.
Yeah, I know. Well, what do you think? Yeah, right. What do you think 3 principles are that?
I'm not necessarily one for lists, but I think that a lot of it comes from, I'm not the morality police, but I can tell you that having a moral compass is something served me very well. I think there's a lot of warrior mentality / protector mentality, and like keeping your honor clean and ensuring the highest standards as much as you can. And don't get me wrong, to you and obviously to your listeners, I'm as human as the next guy and fail constantly. But I also try my best to show up in my A game every single time with good intentions, and I'm prepared. And those like philosophies, and if you tell them like principles, it's having like a readiness ethos. I know that's kind of like that's one of my former commanders, Brian Shantosh, talks about that type of always being ready no matter what the situation is. Even if like the chips are stacked against you, you're never out of the fight. So how does that work in the EP mindset? So like a lot of the great protectors that have written books talk about mindset and posture. So the mindset is that you're dialed in, and the posture is that you're ready to do what's needed, whether it be to deconflict risk by way of distance, or is it deconflict risk right here, right now? Are we in a position that we're going to get hammered right now? Get off the X, whatever the situation is.
Yeah.
And so those principles is an ethos preparedness. It's, do you have an answer to the situation that's about to happen? Are you proactively aware enough to meet that challenge? And if you're not, can you react in such a way as to get that client off the X?
Yeah.
And so getting yourself always in that position to ask, what if? Yeah. What if XYZ were to happen right now? Okay, you're halls and walls and it's hour 10 and they're still in the hotel room. It's like, yeah, what if blah, 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 blah should happen? Are you still, are you dog certain? Can you still run 100 yards with a client on your back? Asking yourself those types of questions. Or even more simply, like, when was the last time you ate? Is your energy level so depleted now that you had an opportunity, but you didn't take it? You know, like, it's like, and always having this like consistent kind of almost like an emotional overtaxing of being prepared and what that ultimately means. And
what's the next move?
And especially like for someone like yourself that has done immense operations, huge events, fantastically notable clients, and their level of success. And you, more times than not, you just kind of have to get up to where their level is. Yeah. And it's like, man, there's some extreme folks that do a lot of really great stuff. And like you talk about, and I've got won't get too far off the warpath here, but you know, one of the books that actually I just got read or got done reading is called the Bremer Detail, about the detail that Blackwater did in early 2003, 2004. And talk about everyday dire circumstances. Are you ready to run and gun? Are you ready to provide the client who you need? Are you dealing with, a home base that's like against you? You're the guy in the front. I always liken it to when you're working for a business entity and you happen to be the face of the talent or the client or the relationship, but you're getting told a whole bunch of like policies and procedures from a distance. You're trying to say like, hey, this is just not the situation. So I always talk about, as far as like the principles of it all, is like you have to be able to lead up and down the chain of command.
Right.
And so how are you better empowering the situation? By limiting information or, holding on to information or, presenting a situation that isn't going to really ultimately benefit anyone other than yourself. It's like, well, that might be your last job. And what do you have to show for it? A whole bunch of negativity. And so, not, just on top of, the high standards and, a preparedness ethos, it's just like showing up and being pretty, pure and humble about what it is you're trying to accomplish. And again, like I said, like I'm a work in progress, just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. I like to think what I also do as far as a principle is to affect other people to do their best work. Yeah. A lot of what I do in my career and my job now is to ensure from a very strategic point of view is that in order for this machine to move forward, everyone has to be doing their best work. How do I help them do that? So like the EP mindset of like taking this siloed approach right now of ultimate protection, ensuring that, your logistics are dialed in. Do you have a contingency plan? Do you have a medical plan? Blah, 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 blah. And then blowing it out a little bit further into like the business world in which I am now over at Netflix is that how do I serve the greater good in order for everyone else to do a great job? And I'm just hoping for a little bit of, reflection back of
because you need the information.
It's my back, I'll scratch your back, and so like I said, it's my little blueprint to how I got to be where I am right now. And like I said, like I don't even know where I am in my journey. I've got hopefully many years in this line of work. But some of the stuff that I've learned up until this point is like, hey man, common sense, be a good person, put a smile on your face. Misery loves company. Smoke a joke a little bit, but get down to business.
You're ready to work when it's time to work. Boom.
Absolutely. Simple stuff, I think, anyway.
No, I dig it. No, I agree 100%. What would you say would be the hardest lesson you've learned in the private security game?
You can't be everything to everyone. I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
I think still in a very egocentric type of world, it's to constantly remind yourself that, you might not be the best person for this gig. And this might, if this works out, great. If it doesn't, then hold your head high, try your hardest. Mm-hmm. The hardest lessons learned, of course, was always taking a deep look into who I am and what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Big old finger facing at me, the man in the mirror, the whole bit.
Get the and back out. Something's breaking down.
Yeah. So like the truth of the matter is like, you know, I try to be cognizant of where my missteps are and then just improve. Yeah. And a lot of times they say like, you know, if you're not having fun, you should get out of here. But if you like, if you try to emulate that type of thing, like, oh, I'm not having fun anymore, but you drop your pack.
Yeah. Like life's not about fun. I mean,
yeah. Like I think it's like a lot, like the folks that do this type of work, I think it's a very serious industry and people need to take it serious, but they shouldn't take themselves too serious.
Yeah. No, you know, actually, on second thought, I agree with you, man. Cause like, I mean, I agree with you anyways, but I mean, when I thought more about that statement, like, man, I love what we do, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I'm so happy I'm not in a cubicle. Like,
trust.
More power to you if you are and you dig it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Do you. But me, I'm so happy that I get to travel and I get to like go backstage and have access to things and I get to like do all the beautiful, amazing things that come with this type of work, man.
Yeah,
like,
but
as a grunt, you know, I was like, if I end up in corporate America, I don't know how long this is gonna be, you know?
I had the same conversation, like,
right?
I could never do that. Oh, here I am. Yeah. You bring up a good point. I think it's also probably beneficial to say like, for as many of the fantastic things that we've been afforded the right to do on the job, it is 90% grind. It's 95% grind. It's not is I don't know, beautiful or I don't know. Use a word that is higher than my pay grade to say, but like it's a lot of work. It's
a lot of work.
You know, it's an hour and a half before the client gets up. It's 2 hours after they go to bed prepping for the next day, and maybe call time 06 in the morning, and you just got back at 4. Like that's not glamorous. That sucks.
No. right.
But how do you get through and how do you forge on? And like, are you providing the same level this day that you are the next day and ensuring that the client stays safe?
Yeah, no. And it's funny when those things do happen, you know, like they're just like they're like these beautiful little kind of byproducts that are organic to what you're doing. But it's just like interesting when because I forget about it. And every once in a while, I got a new dude around me who's like, yo, we're about to be in the blah, blah, blah hotel. You know, we're in these cars. And I'm like, this is beautiful. Because I remember how I felt when this was this was like cool, you know? At the same time.
Yeah. I mean, make no mistake about it.
Careful.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, when I see that, I'm always like, yo, be careful, man. Because you can't be getting like mesmerized by this stuff because those are cool, but it's like there's side effects, like the work. The work is real, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm going to set that right there. What would you say proudest moment is in this game, man? Like what do you have an op that went off and you were like, boom, this is the way I wanted this.
You know,
like, this is a moment where.
That's a really good question as far as like, so I can give you a pretty good example of almost a twofold kind of satisfaction. Mm-hmm. So I was lucky enough to have a client go to Monaco. And they were there to do some publicity work for a brand. And it also happened to be during the Monaco Grand Prix.
Wow.
So I'm also a petrol head, gearhead. I love fast moving vehicles. I've had motorcycles.
Oh, you're one of those
Formula
guys.
One racing is a big deal for me. Yeah. And of course it's like, you know, you're rolling in all serious and like, you know, all this and like underneath I'm just like, yeah. I mean, so let me just talk about the twofold of it all. It's like, in order to get to Monaco, you need to fly into Nice. You need to get on a helicopter. Then you need to get on a boat. And then you got to get to another boat or a hotel. And so you're talking about like trying to like stifle this, like, oh my God, I can't believe where I am. But, like, a laundry list of logistics that you have to pave through, multiple connections in foreign languages. And, you know, at the end, we finally got to where we needed to be. She did her thing. I was able to watch a lot of the race and I was just like geeking out. And I'm comfortable to say that with a little bit of, you know,
trepidation.
Yeah, trepidation to, you know, like, hey, serious stuff here.
No. But
the matter was, it was a great success because the detail went off really well.
Yeah.
You know, myself and the guy that I was working with did a fantastic job. We provided the service that we needed to. The client was super stoked and happy. Mm-hmm. But at the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I'm in Monaco watching this GP. It's pretty awesome.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah.
I'll say there's just no better feeling. I mean, it's just there's just there's better feelings in life, but like it's a really good feeling when you know you did a good job, the client's happy, you know, you even got you a little sum of something, you know, and you're like, boom, that was we all got something on this one, you know, like we all landed something that we wanted, you know.
Yeah, I know, Byron, but here's the thing where, you know, old dog type of mentality. It's like, you get through that detail, they're happy. They might have not have said thank you. Give yourself a little bit of this, call you back. Hey, man, take that and run with it and hold on to it, because that's the stuff that makes the most sense, because eventually you'll get some type of accolade where someone's like, hey, that was great. And you're like, hey, it was. Thanks very much. But in order to be successful in a very humbling type of lifestyle as executive protection people can get put into, is that you said it perfectly. It's that accomplishment of the job. It's getting the client past the wire. Everyone's home and in their own beds. Wow, that feels great.
We did
everything, like thinking about the things that were like super close together as far as like logistical timing, like being able to get that client in that car in such a nice time where they didn't have any exposure and stuff, like something very, for us is like, wow, that's great. To everyone else, it's like,
like we got in the car and then
you got in the car and you left. Big freaking deal. Like,
we're like the inner psychic friction involved in hopefully traffic and Murphy and all these things.
Rubbing the rubber the rabbit tail. Come on.
Right. And then they get in the car and it works out and you're like, you're like, all right, now we're doing this. But then like just as quickly as you exhale, it's time to be on the next piece of the puzzle. Like you cannot, like it's all rounds down range, like we learned in the Marine Corps. It's like, boom, that rounds down range, we're on to the next one. And like, because it's going good doesn't mean it's going to go all the way good. You know what I mean? Like, And until that, I hand that client over to like lock them in their house or wherever the house staff is or whatever, like it's still game time. And because it doesn't have to be some dude rolling up next to the limo and like driving by with a Uzi. No, man. Your driver gets a phone call or like makes a wrong turn. Like just your driver makes a wrong turn, you know, and that puts a bad taste in their mouth, you know, and you have to like, you know, it can be literally anything that reflect on you, because I guess everything just lands on the security shoulders, really.
Always, man. And what's interesting is that like when everything goes wrong, it's all the fingers are pointed at you, but everything goes great. Those fingers don't. They're like, oh, easy day. Like,
you just don't notice. Really right. That's the game, man. Let's see here. So, client management. What do you think? Like, give us some examples of good client management definition for client management. What do you mean when you say this? What does this word make you think of?
Yeah, so I would say like in the solo world, it's that like, you know, having a really great understanding of what it is your boss is trying to accomplish. Yeah. And so the client management of it all is that like, you know, if you got a corporate client or a government official, you know, like head of state, you know, like they have a mission, just like you have a mission, and the accomplishment of the mission has great gravity. So it's very interesting in the two worlds, I would say, from that side of the house to the entertainment side of the house, or let's say a private office, a private home office. Because the truth of the matter is that, like, especially in entertainment, like I said earlier, it's like they most likely have had a little bit of taste of security, and depending on who was put on them, or they could have been a buddy, or they could have been, you know, some guy they, you know, found on Google or whatever. Yeah. That aftertaste is going to be built in.
Yeah. And so they made the bed last.
Yeah. And if you're very lucky to have a professional client that is working to accomplish something, like if they're shooting a film and they're there and they're dedicated to do that, or if they're, you know, like doing speaking engagements, or they're doing, you know, these public events, you know, they're there to do their thing and they're there to go home. You know, there's a lot of freedom in the ability to manage the client because they're already leading the way. So what do you do with the folks that have some high profileness to them? Maybe they're like the hit of the month or whatever, that all of a sudden, by way of branding, their people need, like, oh, we need to have security on this person.
Yeah.
So then how do you manage this client who is apt to expose themselves, not the bad exposure, but physically putting themselves in harm's way because they believe they're in some type of image in order to sell more records, have better return on investment for whatever, or, you know, being in a film. So you kind of have to get to the point of like, well, the service that you're trying to provide allows them the mobility and freedom of movement. Or come to find out, that it's a whole vanity thing. While you're standing next to them is a sign to others that you need to have
they are
security.
valid. Yeah.
And so it's like you kind of start riding this wave. I'm like, well, what are we actually doing here? Because the environment in which we're here is totally secure, yet I've been asked to be here. And it's counterintuitive to like a little bit more of a protector mindset. So in the entertainment profile world, you have to start managing the clients to say, like, for instance, if they start coming up with these grandiose ideas about their exposure to something that's totally wanton, and you need to start, you kind of get in the business saying, like, I'm not going to say no to you, but I will say but. And so you kind of
control some of the variables, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Let's at least set the stage in order for you to do what it is what you want to do.
Yeah.
So, saying yes, but by way of saying, like, I'm going to educate by hopefully some adult, the talent or the client could be underage and they might not be the one that's the handler, and that's fine.
Yeah.
There has to be some type of communication to say, like, hey, listen, happy to do this, but here's what we're going to have to do in order for that to happen. What do you think? And if they say, no, we're going to do it, roger that, here we go. And if it fails, you did enough homework to say, like, this is a possibility.
Yeah.
And by all means, putting a client into an exposed situation, like, for instance, a good visual would be taking a client out the front door of a hotel to like 500 to 1,000 people. Like, in what world is that safe? But for them, the optic of that is like, here are all my fans. But all it takes is for them to be like, oh my God, we're getting overrun. So I don't think I want to do that again. So the next time, like,
fix it.
You fix it.
Yeah, literally. Like, this is your fault. You let me do this. Looking at you like you were so crazy. And you're like, you fought me. We're here because of you. You can't say that. You just got to fix it. But I'm having just flashbacks at times. Yeah. Like, you did this to us. The people are just like, you did this stuff. And, you get them out of it. Yeah. By the grace of God, they appreciate it. And then they blame you for it. Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes they own it. But yeah. Yeah. Good times. That's the thing. Like, in order to stave off that eventuality, it's like having enough professional gravitas to say something to somebody who holds a lot of respect to a whole lot of people. And like someone that's super famous or a head of state or a business, captain that, is very well known or maybe not, or has an air of importance. So you got to cut it to them straight. So the client management component of it all is that you give them the options to make their own decisions. Right. And if you're able to have that type of communication with the client, you're so much better off, not just for this situation at hand, but for them to rely on you down the line. So let's just say that, like, I'm thinking about taking my family to Morocco, and we'd really like to stay over in this part of town. And they're like, that's great. In fact, I've got a great contact there that can help us out locally. If you didn't have that prior conversation that you are someone that can help fix something, they're not going to say, hey, we're going to Morocco. They're just going to be like, pack your bag, we're leaving. And you're like, well, I haven't had it in advance. I don't even know where we're going. So this is, it's like basically conditioning them to feel as if you're a trusted person, like a trusted advisor. And I know a bunch of guys in the industry have spoke about this at great lengths, but that's where it kind of lies as far as like the client management portion of it all, is that you're just being open and honest, but also giving it to them straight, but in a way is to not fearmonger. Yeah. And not set yourself up for failure. What do you mean? Well, it's like, sir, you can't do that because there's a protest and we're going to get, blown up or whatever. There's AKs everywhere. It's going to be terrible. They're going to be like, first off, you're a psycho. Second of all, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't give, the intel report. Or you've been lucky to see it firsthand. It's like, hey, sir, it just so happens that at this point in time today, there's going to be a protest. Maybe it's something that we can have one of the locals pick up this food, or maybe we can redo this time frame for this meeting. And just being open and honest. If the man or woman says we're going to find out a way to go, and we're going to do it. It's going to be great. And you have to have also that little bit of enthusiasm. Yeah. Because if you're like, oh boy, this is just holy. This is going to fail. This is going to fail. Put it farm away. The whole thing. And he's going to be like, wow, you're never working for us again. Yeah. The emotional intelligence component is so big. Perfect way to encapsulate it, dude, is that it's an emotional intelligence. Say like, hey sir, hey man, this is the situation at hand. What would you like to do? I have my opinions. Would you like to hear them? No, you don't. Copy that. Sure. And you can't do that from day one. I had to learn that. There's a lot of uncomfortable conversations and stumbling through the way that you want to speak. Yeah.
does take practice. I mean, I'm still not an ace at it, but I feel pretty comfortable now. But like really the client management, man, it's like, it's a feel. It's a feel. It's like you have to be very self-aware and have a lot of situational awareness about what it is that you're about to suggest. Like,
deliberate. You have to be very deliberate.
Very deliberate. Absolutely.
Every single word really stinking matters.
And they'll, like you said, they'll call you on it for sure. Yes. I mean, as an example, and this is not something that happened to me, but a colleague of mine, a client had asked them, hey, how long until we get to so-and-so place? He's like, it's about 15 minutes. And the client's like, is it 15? Or is it more?
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
like, hey, sir, give me 1 second. So he basically had to eat his shit and say like, yes, sir, it's actually 25 minutes. He's like, good to go. And so essentially that client managed the EP guy.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other way around, which is fine. I mean, it's a developing relationship, and by the God, I'm sure he didn't make that mistake twice.
Yeah.
But I also kind of like hearken that back to what I was saying earlier, is that like, what a perfect example of a failure that I luckily didn't have to go through.
Right.
To say like, hey, when a client asks you a very specific pointed question, have a concrete answer, even if it is, I don't know.
I don't know. I'll find out.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm looking at that now, sir. Like 100%. I think really kind of to your point, client management, you got to realize that you're literally developing a relationship. Like it's a relationship, and you need rapport and you need credibility, because you need just as important as your sub-second draw or whatever you're working on. More important is your ability to influence, the dynamic in the situation and get things that you think would be good ideas implemented. Mm-hmm. And so, when it comes to the whole client management thing, I just look at it as you're making a bed, you're making a relationship. And I think too, another salient consideration is like, they have a past, like they dated other people, so they're probably going to treat you like the people they've dated. I mean, like, dude, and so a lot of it is like breaking down, like past traumas from past relationships. You know what I mean? So like,
Byron, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a client, or maybe like a brand new situation where they're like, oh, I thought you were just security. Yeah. And it's like, oh God, that means that you've had a bunch of shitheads up until this point.
Yeah.
And by the way, when I say that pejoratively, only because the experience might've been negative from their viewpoint. Whereas the EP guy or the security team or whatever just might not have been the product that they were looking for. So they took it as a negative. So like I said, I say it as a joke, but they have a bad taste in their mouth, and they're like, I can't believe you're a well thought out human that knows a little bit more than just standing next to somebody and acting, big and bad.
The hand thing, God bless you, but don't do that. Man. Like I really think that that's a lot of what it is, and realizing when they're projecting what they expect onto you, and realizing like when, and honestly, I mean, if you had a guy that's come before you, that has kind of done some of those things, or like that failed, you have an opportunity to shine. You want to learn what they did, and you want to learn how not to do whatever they did wrong, but the client management thing's huge. And it does take, it takes experience and time and grade, because speaking to the person who essentially is holding your professional or financial well-being, like in their hand while they're talking to you, if I make myself look like an idiot, there's a chance I'll lose rapport, and it'll be much more difficult to protect this person or even keep my job. That consideration, it can make a lot of guys really gun shy when it comes to doing this, and that's something I've definitely seen, man. Like apologizing too much, and like you make a mistake, you fall on your sword, apologize, own it, and move on, and get the dignity back in your eyes, and freaking apply yourself. Good to go. Because if you sit there and start, some clients, if you tap dance around too much because you made a mistake and you're so sorry, they'll make you tap dance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they'll make you sweat.
Yeah, and you're kind of playing into the dynamic. So
totally right.
I think confidence is a big deal, but I say confidence, and not arrogance. I think the difference between confidence and arrogance is that confidence is accurate and arrogance isn't. And that's why pride comes before a fall, and we're always so turned off by it. But if you are just trying to like be the guy that knows, a lot of time you're dealing with intelligent people. and
Yeah.
they're going to know you don't know, and you're going to be a joke.
You bring up a good point, though. I think it's a very interesting kind of like EP 101 type of scenario. It's like, know your protectee. For instance, like if you're wearing 5'11" and he's wearing a business suit, it's like, well, now you're standing out a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Or if you're, answering questions above your pay grade and that you sound like an idiot, it's like, well, maybe you need to go back to figuring out what it is that you're doing here. So like, you bring up a good point about confidence. Is like I said, it took me a little while to get to feeling very matter of fact about the way that I project in the way that I speak.
Yeah.
But it's not from lack of forethought, because of the trial and error of being in situations where it's like, that didn't go so well. Yeah, ma'am, I'm so sorry. So we're actually going to have to go this way.
Yeah.
And like, I've been there countless times where it's like, okay, here's an example. You advance a space and the door that you thought was going to be unlocked is locked. And
you're standing there and it's getting windy and you just like, oh, the client's looking at the side of your head.
The door was locked before we unlocked and there was somebody here. It's like,
no one cares.
Nobody cares. You're the guy that took it the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so, and like all of a sudden, again, it goes back to that thing about it. It's a shot in the ego. It's like, I probably should have done this a little bit better. And then you get to the space where it's like you start not second guessing yourself, but just kind of like future proofing the way that you do things. It's like if you go and you're doing a solo job and someone's like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm like, red flag. I'm going to worry about it. In fact, we're going to talk excessively about what it is that you think is not a big deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you get into this rapport. I'm saying like anyone that thinks that like, this is how we do it every time. I'm like, every time except for this time, because this time's different. So you kind of get into this like mantra of like, I'm not going to be the one that's getting screwed here. Yeah. I'm going to figure myself out of this one. Exactly. And by the way, you still might, mess up, and that's totally you, but you bring a good point about the confidence bit of it all. It's like, own it, see it, feel it, get through it, and move on, man. Move on, because a lot of, like you said, a lot of the professionals will just look into your eyes and be like, man, he's defeated. Like he just, and they might be like, hey man, it's not a big deal. Like we went the wrong way. Like life goes on.
Yeah.
But truth be told, there are clients that will berate you for it, and you might not come back. Truth be told, you might not.
Because they need efficiency. But these people operate at a level where they need efficiency.
Absolutely. And because you set yourself up for success as much as you possibly can, have a little bit of like, well, that was a gut check, and it's like, all right, copy that. We're just gonna do better next time.
Fixing it. I'm fixing it right now. You know what I mean? And man. And I guess the last thing I'd say about that confidence, really, I think what it is one, kind of like we were talking about in the beginning, knowing who you are and knowing the value that you bring overall. You may have messed up, but this is a compartmentalized issue. But overall, I know the value I'm bringing to this detailed team and to this work product. I'm going to outwork this mistake. This thing's passed. And also, in confidence doesn't mean you know everything. Being confident enough to say, I don't know, but I will find out. That's a confident response. And I think the energy of that confidence is really what they're looking for in their communications with you. Like if you do make a mistake and you apologize and you're like defeated all day, like, bro, you're here for protection. Like you can't, they won't want to be around you. They want to be around like intelligent, forward thinking people if they're a business person, or they want to be around like cool, fun people if they're like entertainment, you know what I mean? Or, but they don't want to be around defeated, puppyish, sheepish energy over like things that are insignificant, Well,
so. I just thought of this connection to like EP. It's like you just OODA looped yourself right out of it. In a way, so like you've just mind fucked yourself to the point where you cannot focus on the task at hand. Because I don't know, like so if it was
a client didn't like your XYZ or something. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you kind of put yourself, it's like, hey man, work through it. And a lot of that does come with like stress inoculation of like, I've been in this situation before and I can get myself through it.
Yeah.
And then you breathe afterwards and like, that wasn't a big deal and you got yourself through to whatever. But I think you make a perfect example of like lessons learned of what confidence looks like and then what egotistical kind of bravado looks like.
Yeah.
Because like immediately people are like, oh my God, you're so full of yourself.
Yeah.
Or you're like, I'm thankful that she had the ability to say, yeah, you know what, sir, ma'am, I didn't know that. But here's the only thing I can say as far as like a professional development side is that you better know who's got the answer.
You better be like seconds away from that answer.
Absolutely. So like, yes, I don't know that timing, but I know someone who does, and you should be Johnny on the spot with that, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. No, man, that's good gouge right there. There's so much good stuff, man. Like I could go on that topic for a minute, because that's one that I think trips a lot of guys up, especially at the beginning of their career, is looking that client in the eyes and being able to interact with them. And it really just comes down to knowing your stuff, and then also knowing your stuff on multiple levels, because don't unravel after they start asking you 2 or 3 different questions into your crash, and if you can have that confidence going into that meeting that you're well prepared, or going into that conversation, or just getting in the limo, that, you know what, I'm well prepared. These are the things I'm expecting them to talk to me about, all the way down to like one client would always ask the weather. Well, you better always know the weather. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it just puts you, the energy's better, man. And honestly, you're kind of like a thermometer in the environment. Like if you're stressed out, if you're unsure, if you don't really know your route, and the client's picking up on that. And in terms of client management, that's another factor. Like they're sitting there looking at the side of your head, and you're like, you start seeming unsure, and it gets a little colder in the car, and you know what I mean? And then Murphy like starts pulling out a baseball bat from his backpack, and like,
this is happening.
Yeah, and then there's some construction, and now you're in it. You're in it in Broken Arrow, and, So,
yeah. Pop smoke, you're done.
Yeah, dude. Stay calm. Think through the equation. Prioritize. Execute.
Yeah, and you bring up a very funny kind of like mentality. Like you're sitting in that car, things are starting to go sideways, but like if you can preserve that space, where they're not anything of the wiser. Like if you have to text like a mad person, if you have to get the driver to get on the horn somehow to like work something out, call someone else, and not give your hand. That's the stuff you were talking about earlier about like, at the end of the day, it's like you had no clue as to how much went in under the radar to get you just from point A to point B. And that part of the mission success is like the holy shit moment of like, I can't believe we got through this bit. And I'm not talking about like imminent threat or some type of an attack where you have to get off the X, which is obviously like the dire circumstances, but like even that type of like
stuff.
Yeah, man.
Because it's going to happen, bro.
Gotta be ninja.
It's going to happen. You got to be. And that's when you know you're dealing with a good crew, because Murphy shows up, you know what I'm saying? He's got a machine gun or whatever he's into that day. And you're like, yo, we got to make a play. Here's what we're dealing with. I'm walking the client here. By the time we get here, this needs, and dudes are just like, no one's freaking out and having like a, existential crisis. They're just like, okay, boom, dudes are making moves. I had an incident a while back where client's on a 15-minute jump, and as the pilot takes off, the pilot's like, I'm like, yo, how many packs? And he's like, text me back, we got 10 packs. And I'm like, and I was specifically told because I asked, okay, how many packs we got coming? Just 2. And I'm sitting here, and I just feel the breeze on my face, and I'm like, and I call the pilot up. I'm like, excuse me, hey, what's up, man? How many people are getting onto your aircraft right now? No more code words, bro.
Bullshit. Here we go.
Getting onto your aircraft, and he's like, 10, man. I'm like, Roger that, thank you.
Yeah.
Click, and me and the team just went to work, and there was that moment when they landed, from the time that we were able to like pull a Sprinter van out of our and make it appear. Right. And it was just like, and I'm watching this aircraft like crest the buildings and land, and you gotta have your poker face, and you also gotta be ready to tell them exactly what happened if you have to, and do it with honor and own it, and not throw anyone under the bus. By the way, super, super great point, because you throw anyone under the bus, just how far is that going to go for you? Right. You're always the one that's like complaining, and so like, pointing the finger the other way. And like, clearly sometimes that, I don't know, if you talk to Jocko Well, like he'll be like extreme ownership. And by the way, it's a lot of, that's a lot of great. You got like that guidebook right there. Right. But the after effect is that if you are that type of person, you're not going to be relied upon. You're not going to be asked back. No. End of story. No, honestly. And you kind of dishonor yourself. You dishonor yourself. Like, Well, I had one client that's like, you throw someone under the bus, you might throw me under the bus. You know what I mean? Like, he's like, yeah, I got,
you're talking crap about them. What is he talking about me? You know,
right?
what I mean? Like,
when TMZ calls you, like, can I depend on you, bro? You know what I mean? Like, you sure you're good? You know, you just torched homeboy. Like,
I know.
So no, man, that's good stuff. So let's break into a little more kind of like field craft. This isn't new, but it's something that's becoming, like, I think quickly a buzzword in our game, in our industry, which is the whole overt versus covert security scene vibe, you know. What do you think are pros, cons, differences? What do you prefer? You know, speak on it.
Yeah. I always try to get my focal point to what's in the best interest of the client. I mean, that's kind of obvious in a lot of senses. So when you're trying to formulate kind of like a security protocol or plan for that specific thing, it all has to do with what it is that you're doing there. So for instance, a lot of the times when I try to provide like a covert way of moving clients from point A to point B, it would be about protecting something that's not just themselves. Like for instance, if I'm shooting a film, I want to protect their residence, whether it be a hotel, whether it be a private residence somewhere in a state. I want to ensure that when that client gets back to their home, they do not have to think about their safety and well-being. So for instance, you have a high profile person and you're rolling around a city and you happen to be living in that city, there's a good chance that you're going to get picked up by paparazzi. Yep. And so a lot of the things that I try to do, and this is what I was trained to do, and it works because I've done it, is that you have to lose them in such a way. So you have to remember about the different routings that you want to take. So when you're doing map reconnaissance and you're thinking about different contingencies for if you're being followed. Now, the mantra for being followed by paparazzi, and this is foundation, is that it's not worth anyone's life to try to evade paparazzi.
Right.
Full stop. That photograph isn't worth you driving off a cliff or getting into an accident or anything.
Hardcore evasive driving.
Exactly.
Don't become Jason Bourne.
100%. Like doing J turns at speed, not part of the deal.
No, we're good. Yeah.
But if you're getting waylasted in a foreign country, and I mean, by all means, get yourself off the X. Get the on. But for something like this, it's like in a typical fashion, if you're leaving somewhere and you get picked up by paparazzi, it's not the end of the world. But if you can prevent it in a covert ways to move that client from point A to point B to protect their home. So for instance, like if they're staying in a hotel or staying in something that's in an urban setting, I like to use a lot of one-way streets. I like to use hotels that have a one in and a one way out. So if I've got a driver, or if I'm just in a POV, a lot of times I'll and this is more for having a driver, is that I'll say like, hey driver us into that that underground parking. I'll pop out with a client, go to the back of the house, through the kitchen or whatever, to the back door on another street on 76th Street in New York, pick up a cab and go to their house. So now the paparazzi think I'm in some hotel, but I've actually dipped out the back. And the client's like, okay, I realize and a lot of times I'll prep the client, or it's their idea, which is great. Yeah. I'm happy to give them full credit for it. Yeah. But as long as they can maintain that, anonymity for where they live, then a lot of successes come after that, because inherently they're public figures. They're going to be seen and there's nothing you can do about it. So covertly try to get yourself in positions, out of positions to preserve that type of thing. And then so like the overt side would be something that's inherently public. There's nothing you can do about this public figure on this public stage speaking to the public.
At a specific time.
Absolutely.
Specific place.
Everyone's got the itinerary. This is a total go. And so like, if you're doing a threat assessment and you're setting up your concentric circles of protection and you're starting to find out through the threat assessment or intelligence that this is not the best time because, Intel has said that like, a bomb maker or whatever, let's get into like a plot line like that. Yeah. Clearly we're not going to show up that day. Sorry, this is not part of the deal. But everything else is fair game because in a sense it's a public situation. So overtly you need to be part of an overt attempt to show any adversary that you are hardening your target.
Right.
You're moving them around very easily as far as their abilities from point A to point B, and that everyone on the team is Johnny on the spot. You're being very forceful of your show of force.
Aggressive.
Today's not the day you want to mess with us. And here's why. Because they have no vantage point. Right. Clearly, we're not going to talk about movies or whatever, but if you're up on stage and you got long guns and all that stuff, I'm not talking about like heads of state and that type of realm, because there's a lot of great people doing a lot of good work that is very, like high threat. So, diplomatic security, and of course, like the Blackwater guys. But more to the point of like public exposure, it's like, how do we then, in this overt way, chip away at what's totally overt? So let's try to find some type of middle ground. And I know we talked about that on our panel, is that you're either totally clandestine / covert, or you're totally overt. And so the best kind of practice would be is find somewhere in the middle, so you can kind of just manage this movement, because client's going to go where they're going to go.
Right.
Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to it. So then how do you kind of
like the risk?
From point A to point B. And sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's dialed in tight, nice bow. But as far as like, best practices in the world is that the situation dictates clearly. Using situation awareness and having that ability to communicate to the client like, hey, maybe not the front door is a great time right now, and here's why. Great, awesome, we'll go to the side, and hopefully you've done your homework. Hopefully you have that communication. The guy that's running the gate, the guy can get you in here. Your cards are ready to go, and like the whole 9 yards.
The back streets.
Yep, totally. And so all of it plays into it. So if you're totally as prepared as you possibly is, you're ready for those type of audibles. And so like in some situations, like, ma'am, we're going to have to go a little bit covert here in order to get you blah, blah, blah. And if she's up for it, or if he's up for it, hey man, everything's going to be good in the world. They're actively participating in their own security, which is great, because a lot of times clients won't, or they're not aware enough, or they're doing something anyway. But like, I don't know, like what about you? Like what's your take on it? I
think, just like you said, essentially both of them are tools, and I think situation dictates the principles or the tactics. Situation dictates tactics. And what I do like about, I guess an advantage guys like us have, is that I can easily take an overt stance, or I can take a more covert, relaxed stance. And kind of switch back and forth between the two. If I need to walk next to someone and look like Mr. Security Dude, I can. If I need to give them a longer trail, and I can maybe even pull out my cell phone and fiddle with it while I walk behind them, and they do what they're doing or shopping or whatever, so that we don't draw attention from paparazzi, I can. And so like, just knowing where you're at and knowing the mission, I had a couple times where, there were some security assets that came with clients that had like expectations in LA, like, all right, everyone's going to be in a suit. And we're like, well, I mean, and then, managing your client starts taking on a whole different kind of deal, and you got to explain to their security assets that are essentially just trying to like ego you and make you, turn you into Patsy kind of, that, hey man, in this AO, like you run around in LA in a suit, before we get to our first spot, we're just going to be on TMZ, and it's just going to be a headache, and our client's not even so high visibility that they'll ever recognize them. But just because we're in suits and earpieces, here we go, so, and especially international, there were times when we took a more overt stance, even though we weren't armed, just to hedge against, any observers, because we were tourists, So yeah, I'd say both of them. Neither one is the answer, but I would say great point, man. Both of them are tools, and I think a professional knows how to move in and out of using either one based on the situation. Yeah, it's also interesting as far as like a training component of it all. It's that like I didn't go through like the FBI surveillance school or like how to do counterintelligence. I mean, in Marine Corps, I did a bit of that stuff, but not on this. And again, it's a lot of common sense. And you're right, it's a total tool. It's like, do I have to bring out something kind of completely overt right now in order to dominate this terrain, to control this aspect, just to get the client from point A to point B? Or like kind of like you said, like fumbling around your phone, drop back. A perfect example could be like at a restaurant. You're posted up at the bar. You're looking like just a single idiot, just eating alone. Lunch. Yeah. But you're observing the client and also observing what's going on in their world and getting ready to do your thing. It's a good long practice of essentially kind of going through those scenarios in space and time. It's like, what's the best play here in order to do the job? To get the end result? How do we get there? And to your point,
maybe it is covert, because I remember, and you brought up a good point, like if you stand next to somebody, they can immediately pigeonhole you to one thing. And I always kind of came to the mindset, I'm like, if I can get the adversary to think I'm the boyfriend, the manager, the assistant, the whatever, I'm still kind of at an advantage because they don't know what it is and they're kind of questioning what this is all about. Yeah. And of course, that can go in the realm of total adversarial person, or it could be just like paparazzi who get the drop on you. I mean, years and years ago, there was an issue with one of the guys that in the EP world that got pegged as a man nanny, because he was standing next to the client, like pushing a stroller, like God forbid he's not doing his job specifically, and didn't had no essay on the fact that someone was taking his photograph. And the guy got outed as, something that he wasn't. It was a horrible situation in my opinion. Yeah. But then again, and I think this kind of goes into what we've been talking about for a while now, is that it's also kind of like, as the situation dictates, it's that it's the impression in which people are viewing the situation dictates the reality. So perception is the reality. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, and this isn't for like the PSD guys or for the government guys, because, there's a rhyme and a reason, a lot of orchestration to what they do. But on the side, on especially entertainment, it's like, if they think this is what's happening, then that's what they think. And there's nothing you can do to change that except harden the target, be proactively aware, have the ability to communicate, and just stick to the EP basics to then better exemplify the situation. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, man. No, I love both approaches. I'd say I prefer being a little more covert, like on a daily swerve when a client's like, all right, we're going to go do this thing. I'm like, if I get to choose, I'm CCW'd up and I'm like pulled back and I'm like, yo, live your life, man. I'm just going to make sure nobody messes with you and drive you to, or, be here, whatever we need to do. And I think that's the one that I prefer. But yeah, knowing when to use push what button is like really the game, Cool. That's what's up. And so we've talked a little bit about the industry, but like executive protection as an industry, what do you think about that? That's the economy. Like that's the big meatball out there these days, isn't it? Yeah. I didn't even know this whole thing. Like, real quick, I mean, when that was my first close protection conference I went to. I went and shot last year, which I'm coming this year, and I'm training and I'm trying to win that shooting competition next year. At least be top something. So just let that be known, right? Yeah. Yeah, man, I didn't realize there's all these there's culture and cool kids and not cool kids. Like there's a lot in there. It's the last decades. I'm just realizing this thing. It's hard to kind of put it into its own box now, isn't it? It's one of those things where there's a lot of folks doing EP work, and I'm not going to start throwing stones at folks, because truth of the matter is that there's a lot of people that might misrepresent themselves based on the skill core set. Like, for instance, I could have very easily, or yourself included, been like, well, in the military, I did this, so that means that I'm, I can do this job. Right. And so not saying that that's not a bad approach, but again, it only could get you so far because professionals then realize that you don't know what you're talking about. And so for instance, with the EP as an industry, because it's such a wide kind of net, the slices and the different kind of focuses, I didn't do PSD in the military. I was a grunt. I, close with and destroy the enemy. I didn't protect any generals. Yeah. You know what I mean? I wasn't Blackwater. I had opportunities to do that after the Marine Corps. I decided not to because it kind of was then that's military stuff, and I want to leave that to the military guys, but that's for something else. But my point is about the skill set is that the EP industry has so many wide varieties of experts. Right. So there's no way to standardize. And realms of security. Yeah. And I think that on our panel, you're bringing up some really good stuff about faith-based protection and how it's a whole other galaxy of people that you work for. Yeah. And the folks that are actually there at these events specifically. So even your threat level changes. And the mission. Yeah. The types of threats. Right. And so what's interesting in the government kind of corporate side doesn't necessarily translate. And so for people that are trying to cross deck or have more experience, there isn't a playbook. Now, clearly a bunch of really great people have written books on protectors, and but a lot of them will say like it's one of the oldest industries out there as far as being a protector. But like business wise, as the EP industry goes, hey man, it's a tough nut to crack because we've got these advisory boards, and of course the one that we spoke at, it's a really great situation that's just kind of blossoming.
Yeah, growing.
But there's I mean, you look at it like this. Like in the UK, SIA has got some type of standardized way. You can't be an EP guy without,
going through that, getting that card.
So with an absolute minimum, you've said that you've done some type of training to get you to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Here in the US and especially in California, you need a guard card. And now you're an EP guy. Like that seems to be unfair, not so much to the people in it. And I'm not going to go on the ego side of things. I'm going to say it's unfair to the clients. It's like just because you just got out of Secret Service, and I'm not going to pigeonhole the Secret Service because they do a lot of fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
But entertainment and Secret Service are oil and water.
Yeah.
Until they find the distilled middle of like how it is to protect this lone individual.
Right.
On entertainment, you don't have the resources that USSS has.
Right.
And on the entertainment side, the bureaucracy and the compartmentalization and the checks and balances, the bureaucracy is a lot of times not even there.
Right.
And so there, as far as the protector kind of like realm goes, it's like a lot of good things can come together if we marry them somehow.
Yeah.
So there's obviously some misconceptions about kind of the things that we do on the entertainment side as far as the professionalism, but I'd also be likened to say that there's some misconceptions on professional protectors on the government and military side.
Yeah. 100%.
So clearly the mountaintop is humongous in order to get to it. But I think this kind of like motion of what we did at the at that EP convention, and forgive me, IPSB board. Yeah. They are really kind of moving the needle forward and into a dark room, essentially, because no one really kind of understands what the end game looks like.
Yeah.
So you can maybe pigeonhole other industries, and you can be in a position to kind of emulate other things, but there really isn't anything else like it that I've seen, and maybe I haven't put enough work into to kind of emulate something. But professionalism is very characteristic of the centerpiece, I think, as far as standards and practices go.
Yeah.
And so like having that kind of pave the way is like, as long as everyone's being professional and accommodating the folks that we're working for and the people that are paying us, and ultimately we're protecting them, I think that's a good kind of motivator to kind of move forward to. And like I said, like I'm happy to be along with it. That's how I met you. I think this is your podcast is reaching hopefully a lot of folks, doing a lot of good things for people. And I know when you brought up the topic of the industry, kind of just seeing there's a lot of old world mentalities out there. And there's also a lot of new emerging styles of EP. And to be in a position to hone it and then to adopt it, because everyone's kind of scared of putting a stamp of approval on something. And then all of a sudden, well, you're this industry's guy and you've got the best, this, that, and the other. It's like, well, is that really true? Because there's plenty of people that have been successful without that type of kind of either training or exposure
and recognition. And
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, and it's growing so much. Like, this is like, I feel like it's like the security gold rush up in here, bro. Like, because, with the way that the world's going, or at least the way that it's publicized that the world's going. I was doing a report for one of my classes, and I was trying to put something together like a scary shock and awe. The world's so crazy right now. And I was looking at FBI statistics, and I don't remember them. But essentially what I really learned was actually violent crimes are actually down from the 80s and 90s, I think, early 90s, 80s.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is horrible. How am I going to finish my report? Like my whole life. It was like something about how you need a CCW or something. Anyway, but I was like, well, dang, but, now that we have all this connectivity and publicity being allocated the way that it is with specific events, I think the world's getting a little bit more scared. And I think that, everyone in the security industry sees that. And also they see that like, the second you put a stamp of approval on someone, some tactic, some anything, TTPs, the enemy's techniques and everything have changed, and now they're not shooting people anymore. Now they're driving vehicles into buildings, and everyone has vehicles. So now what's the new protective measure? And wait, we're getting reports that they're going to now use chemicals, like handheld chemicals and girls, and you know, homegrown terrorists and like, you know, like what's the new, you know, so I feel like the industry's a little gun shy because it's not as cut and dry. It's not a dude rolling up on the president with a 6-shooter, and it's not like guns are almost just not, they're not necessarily, you know, they're not absolutely obsolete, but they're not the primary and only means of doing harm now. And
I would agree.
So I think our industry is like evolving so quickly right now that everyone's really just in a state of trying to be proactive. But I think also another thing that really, I think maybe limits some people and stops them from like discovering their full potential or being who they could be in the industry is just being afraid to be wrong and being afraid to stand behind something or their own ideas, because in this industry, they will eat you. Like armchair quarterbacks are real, man. Trolls are there and they are waiting, and they got their neck beards and they're living in their mom's basement with their big gulps. And they're, you know, like
trying to tell you that you were wrong.
Yeah, and then they will blow you. And there's more of them on Facebook than anything else, you know. Then you know what I mean, or it's wherever you're posting your stuff.
Yeah,
and so it really also is a time where it takes like balls of steel to be able to be vulnerable enough to put your ideas out there. Learn from the market, learn from whatever it is, and to be able to intelligently defend those ideas. And if, you know, vulnerabilities are found in those ideas, to say, hey, you know what, this was actually the point. Thank you for that consideration. And let's evolve this idea into something more valuable. You know what I mean? Because my ego's not attached to it. My identity's not attached to it. My identity is attached to doing good work. So, you know, thanks for punching a hole in that thing. Let's patch it up and see if we can't make something better. So I think with regards to the industry, I think it's an exciting time. We're seeing exponential growth. I think we may take over a lot of jobs that are done by, you know, big municipalities and things like that in the future, possibly. And I just see a lot of expansion, man. I think that we really haven't figured out all the things private security can do. And I think also as technology grows, man, like the applications are expanding as well with regards to what we can do and how we can help people live safer and more efficient lives, you know?
The technology side of things kind of, for me, used to be kind of like a foregone conclusion that I'll know nothing. I mean, I know how to type in a computer. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things. I'm not a youngster, but I still don't understand, you know what I mean? Like, if it's not a crayon or I can't break it or whatever, I'm like, I kind of don't want it.
Right.
But like, for instance, like the correlation between doing great work in the field is that like you have to be able to adjust to the situation at hand. And by way of it's going to be technology somehow or another. I know at the conference, there was a panel about the technology that's out there. And I know that one, like in our shop now, we use this it's called Data Miner, and it basically aggregates and pulls in the fire hose that is Twitter and comes in a nice, easily digestible kind of manner. And we do a lot of great situational awareness and intelligence gathering from that. And so, like, for instance, clearly the solo EP guy might not have those types of resources, but there's open source intelligence out there. I know that a couple guys out there are doing good stuff on the open source stuff, just kind of figuring out the best pipeline in order to get to it. But as far as like industry wide, it still is very hit or miss as far as the ability to kind of like, well, you can't have like a total clearinghouse. There are a couple companies out there that are trying to make that attempt, and that's awesome. Like, by the way, be marketable to as many people as possible, but also have a really high quality type of output is definitely plan number one for the majority of these companies. But I think you're totally right. As the world evolves, thus too shall we evolve. And if we don't, and we go like with this practical way of like, well, I don't need this and this isn't going to help me. But it's like, why not just say like, well, that's an interesting concept. Yeah, I might not use it this time, but I might be able to next time. But you brought up a good point about being free enough to speak your mind without the penalty of being, being called out as a heretic because you're thinking an alternative way of saying something.
Burned at the stakes for it.
Burn at the stake. It's like, all right, sorry I brought it up type of thing. But I also like to kind of think like, if we're in a forum like we were at the convention, a lot of more good can come out of it as opposed to just kind of throwing stuff out there and see if anything sticks, because at least you start getting the backing of other people with more voices that are with you. Now, clearly that might be like an echo chamber type of situation, but as far as like the EP industry as itself, we can't, I mean, I am not speaking on behalf of the EP industry. Right. I just kind of think that like, in order to get the best quality product out to the folks that need the most, there needs to be some type of streamlined standardization process that at least gives clients, customers, protectees a list of what they can be doing. Like, do I need a straight solo EP guy that flies the entire world, or gal that flies the entire world that can be with me? Or do I need something that's a little bit lower for maybe an event, or maybe that's something like residential, just to at least show that there's different options out there. And clearly companies are already doing this, and that's what's great about private industry. You can do that. You know what I mean? Whereas it's like, the FBI, protectors, Secret Service, obviously, or DS, or any of the other ones, they're going to have a job tomorrow. Like, they're going to elect a new official and they're going to go protect them. It's like that EP side of things is like, there's no kind of buy-in for them to do, not extraordinary work, and that's not the right way to describe it, but they're going to have a job tomorrow. Whereas in private security, it's like, you have to be good today because you might not have a job tomorrow. Yeah. And so then there's a whole other kind of like grassroots effort, and I think that comes from training. So like the different training academies out there, I don't think they should kind of come together, but there needs to be some type of collective mindset of like, what are the standards that mean the most? Because there are plenty of places that are lean heavily on firearms and defensive tactics, whether it be driving, hand-to-hand, and then of course with firearms. And there's others that are strictly soft skills, and they're like how to be more professional and that kind of the soft skill. Yeah, the soft side of things. And like if there's a way to bring everybody together, and by all means, hey, this is America, or this is a first world country where you're afforded the ability to kind of throw out there and see if someone wants to buy your product, and it's great. If it's not, but that's a little bit dangerous too, right? So you're marketing a product that might not be exemplary, but then again, who am I, or who do you to say that product's not exemplary? Right. So again, it's like this kind of like spinning the wheels. It's like what worked real great for this company might not work great for that company. Yeah, or that client, or or like the Secret Service style might not apply over here, but it might over here. Yeah. So again, not going to be the one that most likely is going to be writing anything down, but I'd love to be able to contribute with someone like yourself to get somewhere where it makes a lot of sense for the folks that we serve, and try to do that. Yeah, no, 100%, man. That's kind of that's the dichotomy of this game. It's just so like, well, what are you doing? Well, with your client, I'm doing this. Oh, well, I actually work at a faith-based organization. Our primary considerations are this, and it's all different. But I think that also makes a lot of room for a lot of different types of people to get into the game. So I think that's cool. So misconceptions. I think we hit a lot of them. Yeah, I think we did. I mean, it's any on the top of your head. I mean, no, I don't know. I think everyone's kind of met the 31 flavors type of guy or gal out there that showing up thinking it's one thing when it's clearly not. And sometimes like I always like to take the hit. Like if one of my people that I have in the field is inaccurately portraying themselves correctly, that's my fault, not theirs. But that only goes so far. Because like if you're showing up looking like Billy Badass with 511s on and you're doing a faith-based thing, it's like maybe not the right place for that. Yeah. That person should be a little bit geared to kind of just maybe asking that first question, like, hey, what's the attire here? Or even if you're asking what the attire is, it's like, why am I wearing it like this? Because to the point of what you were saying about the client who asked for you to be suited and booted, like in LA, it's like, it doesn't translate. It doesn't make sense. Yeah, that's not relevant here. I mean, and so it all kind of like this churn of these different details and points of when it culminates, that's the word. Right. Okay, cool. To when you're actually on the detail itself, it's like, are you there to serve the client ultimately? So of course the misconceptions are that it's not glamorous. Standing next to a superstar doesn't translate to you being anything bigger than they are. It's like that's not how it works. And that some of the misconceptions are it's like it's just holding hands or babysitting high profile people. I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. But don't get me wrong, there are some kind of clients out there that might want that. Yeah. And that's okay too. But that doesn't mean that doesn't make you EP. It takes you're a guy or a gal filling a slot for that day. But the EP comes into fold, I think, in the misconception piece is that it's a career. It's a mindset. A protector isn't something that you just do on the weekends or at nights to fill in for somebody. It's an ethos that you live by. And by all means, it's like whatever you can do to improve your situation. If you're a doctor, lawyer, whomever, construction guy, it doesn't matter. As long as you're voluntarily pushing yourself forward, the misconception is that the things that you see on TMZ sometimes is clearly the opposite because you know different. And you're seeing this, it's like, I'm confused and confounded about why this is translating. But then you look at the client and then you listen to the situation at hand. It could be just, it could be also the motivator that the paparazzi wanted you to do something, or he goaded you into like a reaction or whatever. And now all of a sudden, like you're saying something they probably shouldn't have.
You should.
Yeah. And also the misconception is that you can't just jump right into it. Clearly, I had the benefit of going on to a firm that had a nice client list that I was able to operate with and then kind of move out from that way. But if you're in the industry, just starting out, it's you take what you can get, build. And you build. So the misconception then comes in is that you just, get off the plane at LAX, then all of a sudden you're handed a detail. It's like, sorry. No. And I'm sorry that you thought that. And so I think there's a lot of components as far as demystifying the industry on the entertainment side. As far as that goes.
And I think too, like, you don't want to just be put in a close protection situation if you haven't been seasoned a little bit, because we talked about it at the beginning of this thing. You make mistakes. It's a high pressure, high scrutiny situation, and it's unforgiving because once you lose that rapport, it's very hard to come back from that. If you have a chance to come back from that,
tell me about
it. Really want to be able to watch this enough to evolve quickly enough to be able to then handle the comp when it's reluctantly handed to you, when it's handed to you, and it's okay, now I'm playing for keeps on my own. I can't hide behind this guy, this detail leader guy anymore. He either got axed or he moved, whatever happened, and now I got to fill this slot. So and then also with what we do, man, I think on misconceptions they can be dangerous, because what we do, it's combat related at times, but even worse than that, like if you try to go harder than you're supposed to go, or at the wrong time, or you think that you're more than you are, or anything like that. The misconceptions can be physically dangerous, but they can also be very dangerous to your career. Like you were saying, you show up in the wrong thing, say the wrong thing, have the wrong mentality, and I hear you with the wrong mentality. We're going to try to remediate as efficiently and effectively as possible. But if Hollywood has ruined you, then I can't let you get too close to my client or really do anything significant, because those types of mistakes are too expensive, and it's on.
I mean, the point you're bringing up as far as like the leadership component of it all is that I think in a lot of ways what we do is pure leadership, because you're not only just obviously leading the detail, or if you're a solo guy, obviously instituting this type of security program by yourself, but the leadership, like I said, about up and down the chain, it's like you doing that with your own company, ensuring that they've got the proper information, and along with the client, or client managing over on this side. So you have to be almost of this, obviously multiple type of hat wearer, but at the end of the day, make the call what's best for the client. If it's best for the client, you're going to be good to go. And however else that realms, because if the client at the end of the day doesn't like what you did, then there's nothing you can do about it. It's over. And so you just move on to the next. Maybe like you said, exactly.
No, that's what's up. So something else that I think definitely deserves to be talked about is training standards. I'm going to pop in here on this one right after you get done. But
please do.
Yeah, man. Training standards. How do you feel about that in this game?
So it's interesting. I think if you're not afforded the right, like some folks, about jumping into a company where you can kind of be groomed, find mentorship, do as many details as you possibly can, and do the OJT or on the job training, make the mistakes in real time, as opposed to another version, which is not any less better, I should say. But like going through the schooling, getting as many credentials as possible, there's a lot of value in that. The only issue is that there's no stress involved. There's no stress of knowing what it feels like to be at the receiving end of an ass chewing, because to my example, you walk them down a corridor where there's a locked door now, and the timing might have been off, and now their day is ruined, and now you're getting yelled at. There's nothing you could do to brace for the challenge. Like, clearly there's life skills that you can like already have. I mean, like you and I and others like us have military training where it's like, hey, we got pretty thick skin and we can pretty much deal with whatever's going to be thrown our way. Right. But always being said is like there's a professional component. Okay. With that being said, training standards kind of boil down to what it is that your objective is. So for instance, if you want to be someone who, you know, works in a world that is totally formulated to being a solo protector, there's a lot you need to do in order to get to that place. And it's not just about taking as many schools as possible. And I think you said it earlier, working your way up, going through the paces, paying your dues, getting to the space where someone like you as a business owner can say to someone like me, okay, you're good enough to be alone with my client essentially, or the client that we've now conducted business with by way of contract. I believe that you can go and accomplish this job. Now there's nothing better in the kind of in our world to have that kind of like ominous dominance to say like, yeah, the guy who actually developed the client is now saying, hey, you can go out with this client. Yeah. That in itself is, I think, the pinnacle of this training standard, because you are accomplishing what it is that the mission is asking for. Yeah. Full stop. That doesn't say like I don't need to go do Tony, and I forget Scotty, I think I can't remember his high-speed driving course. It's and you talk about like tools in a toolbox. Yeah. That's a tool for the toolbox. But as far as like the training standard of it all is that the validation is you're getting repeat business. You're becoming someone in the industry that's reliable. Yeah. And you're also helping other people in order to get to a certain place. I think ultimately, by way of however you get there, is fantastic. So if it is going through the EP academies, if it is, you know, being a cop or going into the military, or just being school fed in a sense that, you know, you're taking as many classes as you can in order to get to the place where you can feel the stress. Yeah. And do get those reps of speaking to clients, or getting yourself out of a covered evacuation situation, or you know, being in a foreign country, not understanding the language, but still having to get the job done. Yeah. So those stresses right there, and clearly you and I haven't been talking too much about the dire situations. So things like you are caught in an L-shaped ambush and you need to get yourself out of there, driving through it, or however you need to do it. Yeah. Those situations are built upon very hard set skills. And if you don't have those skills, I'm not quite sure what it is that you're doing here. Okay. The soft skills that kind of butter that bread is what kind of takes you on to the next realm.
Daily kind of,
Exactly. So if you got the protector's mindset, you've got the correct posture, and you're a good person. And I'm not the morality police, but if you're a good person, you go farther, blah, blah, blah.
This is true. It's so true.
So as far as like training standards, it's like, find the best and brightest. Take someone's reputation and hold them to that standard. If they're touting themselves to be the best in the industry, then I hope you're getting your money's worth. And if you do, fantastic. Go out there, do good things. And if you're not, I hope you're saying, hey, you know, maybe in a professional capacity, this really wasn't worth the money in which I'm trying to invest here. And by the way, that's totally valid, because in this scenario, you're the customer. And if you're not getting out what you put in, it's like, hey, you know, you just spend a whole bunch of money and probably wasted a whole lot of time for someone that, you know, you could have probably got, you know, off the internet watching, you know, a YouTube video. Yeah,
which is true. You know, God bless YouTube for everything it is. You know,
thank you, YouTube.
I know, right? Man, like the training standards thing for me, like really kind of that has vexed me is, you know, like I've been on a number of different details in my short little decade in this game. And I've worked for one company that has taken its guys to the range, and we're about to go and actually train, and everyone needs to perform to a standard. That is by no means like the rule. You know, I've been on details with a lot of guys that we just never ever went to the range, you know, and that's because of working and 100 different things. But I think that if we're ultimately trying to be cohesive in some type of combat engagement, then I think that should be some consideration. There should be some consideration for that if we're working together, you know. Now on my details, that's being implemented, you know, and I feel really good about that. But, for a long time, I was kind of like, do I even know if this guy can like bang or like move or like do anything? Like, I mean, like,
it's not a good feeling to have.
Freeze up, like, yeah, exactly. And then, being a grunt, we know what it's like, to be like, you think combat is one thing, and then it starts happening and you're like, this, what I mean? Like, I know what it takes for a civilian to get shot at and react intelligently and decisively.
Mm-hmm.
I mean? I remember learning those lessons and, I'm looking around and like, so, I think it's really important, and I've had a lot of relationships in this industry where I've been like, you're a really cool guy, but like,
oh yeah,
what do I know about what you can do? And I guarantee, like, and I learned this in the Marine Corps too, if we start doing a training exercise and you try to get through a scenario and you've never worked with these other 3 or 4 guys, I will jam you up. You will be bunched up. You will be confused. You won't know how each other are going to move. Mm-hmm. You could have all went to EP schools, and guess what, bro? Give me some sim rounds, okay? And like, if you've never really moved with these guys, you're probably going to get your feelings hurt, me included. You know what I mean? Like, you guys be bumping into each other and like, you know what I'm saying? This stuff, and so it's something that I've been like looking at, and inviting guys to train, and they're
awesome, dude,
like,
cool.
But you always get excuses because there's an ego boundary. There's an ego barrier a lot of times, and it's like, I got 100 times more respect for the guy who will come out with me and be like, hey, dude, I ain't picked this thing up in a long time, bro. Like, I haven't
being real.
I've been working and being a dad and doing knifing and adulting. All right. So like, I ain't been out here, messing around for a while. So, like, let's just take it slow and safe. And I'm going to be like, good on you. And good on you for getting the heck out here, and busting some dust off and busting some dust, if you're carrying a gun for what you're doing, it might not be. And if you're not, then this is like a whole nother kind of no factor for you. But for the guys on the ground who are, considerations, so like, do you know what you can do? Do you know what you and your team can do?
Right.
You got your SOPs written down, like, can you execute on those things? And then the other kind of training for me, like, I mean, I consumed like 200 or 300, like my Audible accounts of like 350 books, like psychology and, all kinds of things like that. And so I'm building my paradigm constantly, like, and I listen to, like, when I'm in the gym, I'm listening to all these like motivational speakers. I have a playlist I put together on YouTube, like 500 or 600 videos of like motivational speakers and all this stuff. And like,
how about Dave Goggins?
Goggins he's the new cat's pajamas, bro. He gives me inferiority complex every time I listen to him. I'm just like, nah, more, get more.
Yes, I will run through that brick wall.
Yeah, right. You can't hurt me. What? So like, I'm just dealing with people like that in my mind all the time. And I think the reason that's very pertinent to executive protection is because if you're in the car with a very successful person, and you are asked to speak, I think you should have something of substance and value to say. And if you're dealing with these problems, like, one of the main advantages I've seen, the problems that get thrown at you is, like, I'm learning from people who have dealt with much more sophisticated equations than I'm going to be faced with on a daily basis, really, ever. You know what I mean? And so when I can tell a measure of a man by the measure of his problems, when I look at what gets dudes flustered, and when I look at what gets dudes, knocks, emotional intelligence starts geeking out, and they're feeling like the client's beating them up and stuff, and like all these things are happening, I'm like, you need to really expand your paradigm, your view. You need more psychological tools for navigating these situations in front of you. You need more perspective. And so I feel like, kind of not even to the point of training standards, but to this continual learning that I think should always be happening. And like, I think it's really important for people to continue widening their horizons, because you probably came from a different place than your client, and you probably look at things differently. And to be able to have, like, even an international perspective, I think it turns out to be valuable, in the long run, to understand manners. Like a couple of those books were on how to be a gentleman and manners and how to be couth, son. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and understanding those dynamics. And,
well, let me put you on the spot. What's your go-to book or your go-to podcast, or what kind of gets you
information sources to get started on this journey?
Like you bring up a good point. Like there's a guy by the name of Clint Emerson. He wrote a book called Escape the Wolf, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And it's like basically travel security, travel advisement about how to navigate through the world like a gray man. Ooh. And understand customs and courtesies in each of the different kind of first, second, and third world countries that you might travel to. And it's a great little tool to have, like, to bust the rust if you haven't been to, say, like Brazil or like these areas where they don't go straight to getting down to brass tacks. You got to say, how's your family? How are things? How are you today? Hey,
you don't do that.
Watch the football match. And you got to get them to the point on the friendlier side in order to stop about business. And that's clearly not around. Yeah, exactly. And so, like, I'm interested to know what some of the books that you like to read.
I'd say someone asked me this the other day. They were like, if you were going to give me one book for executive protection, what would it be? And I was like, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, son. Dude, like, we're talking about social dynamics. We're talking about being a courtier. We're talking about understanding how to survive in the king's court.
Yes.
Man, that book, like, I probably made more money from that one. The principles in that one book, don't say too much. Don't give them too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't outshine the master. Like, these rules have kept me alive, and I did a podcast where I reviewed the book. It's like,
awesome.
It's in there. It's like one of the first 5 podcasts, but yeah, man. And he just dropped a new one that's 5-year human nature, man. And I'm listening to it, and man, it's like, I'm at the tail end of my counseling and psychology degree, and I'm going into forensic psychology. And so, like, dude, it's like everything that I've learned consolidated into one book and then strained through the lens of, like, ultra pragmatic realism, like just being a ruthless realist with yourself and with everything and everyone around you. And it's like, man, if I could say, if there was a book that you could read that'd make you smarter than most of the people around you, it's that book. I don't even want all y'all to read it, to tell you the truth.
Mike drop. End of story.
Right. Yeah, so that, those 2 books will put you, at least for social dynamics, put you on a whole other level.
Yeah. Awesome.
But then, like, little books like As a Man Thinketh, that's like a 45-minute audiobook. You could listen to it before you get to work tomorrow. What it does for your paradigm, what it does for your confidence, what it does for just, like, you are where you are based on the algorithm and the quality of thoughts. You want a higher quality life, you need to get higher quality information so you can get higher quality thoughts. And, like, just a book like that was, created, like, I think it was written in like the 40s or something, but the wisdom is so nasty.
Yeah.
I listened to it, like, for a year, like once a month. You know what I mean? It just takes you to another level. So, I mean, those are 2, those Robert Greene stuff, that's kind of where I would start, like, and be like, take a look at your social dynamics, because I think that's the first place guys make mistakes. Like, they might make tactical errors that may or may not go noticed by clients, but I think by far the first thing that clients start being like, I don't know if I like this guy. It's because of social error. Yeah. This is something we haven't really covered too much on here. Business to business consulting. Yeah. Why would you say that's different than a lot of the more personal stuff and close protection? Yeah.
So I've been lucky enough to build a lot of great, networks, folks that have their own companies and run them and are trying to look to develop a revenue stream or come at or attack an angle of client issues or employment issues, or whether it be like insurance issues, anytime that revolves around business practices itself. I was lucky enough to help run a small business for a couple of years and learn a lot of these lessons, and also then couple them into kind of like the EP, private industry, entrepreneurial type of world. And so on a strictly pro bono basis, it's just a nice fancy word of saying picking up the phone and talking to somebody. So I've been able to help some people in the industry by way of just having these conversations about how they can diversify what it is they're doing right now in the private protection world, and how to like gain more of a foothold with clients, or gain more of a foothold with finding better people to do the jobs that they're trying to do. Because just as much as I do,
that's a big problem in the industry right now. Actually,
you can't replicate yourself by but you can find some folks that are really close to it and then get them to a standard, but there are not very many of them out there, or willing to go as far as you need them to go in order to fulfill a task or a role. So a lot of business owners are having to grind it out still all by themselves, and then pulling other guys along or other gals to get them to where they need to be. And of course, the way to prop that up essentially is that the training in which you still is one thing, but being able to pay them is another, unfortunately. And so like, how do you get a revenue stream that can prop up what you ultimately want to do, but are still paying the bills?
Yeah.
And so like taking these case by case examples and trying to like help as far as exposure, or just as simple as making connections, just connecting people, having the ability to like, hey, I know someone that's great to do that, not just to do a gig, but maybe somebody in another industry. Like one of the biggest, one of the easiest ways, and easy is not the right word, but it's the best I got right now, to have 24 hours a day, 7 to 8 days a week, money coming in, is static security. And static security game is a great foundation, as you say, to have. You get a couple of clients and a client listing that knows other clients, and you start building this. I mean, you're not going to compete with Securitas or with Andrews International, or obviously the G4S's, because that's just the whole of the ball game. Yeah. But it's a way to stand up another area. So you get a little bit of static security, and then you can start putting money into the EP side, because you can only do so much. So a lot of what I like to do, as far as like, it's not so much like consulting. So I call it business. It's more just, it's networking. It's essentially what you're doing. I think, in a sense, like, you're not getting paid to do this right now, but you're also improving an infinite amount of people's lives by what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, whether it be on your social media pages or what we're doing right now. It's an opportunity to grow something that has a value to yourself. And that's the way I look at it. I'm like, I'm doing this because, selfishly enough, like, I want to do it, and I want to see other people do real well. And so hopefully there'll be some type of kind of like karma rebound where I get to up on something, but I'm not doing it for that, if that makes sense.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying, because it's like, what you're doing is you're giving value, and you're essentially giving this value kind of freely. And what it does is it attracts, because now you're giving this value, it like, you're helping people, and that helping people brings you opportunities. And it is an ironclad principle, and I have used it for years. And it like takes on a life of its own. And honestly, it's why one of my number one values is contribution. Like, nah, man, it's like the best way to get ahead. It's like, all right, so I'm going to demonstrate value, I'm going to give value, and I'm going to contribute, and it widens my sphere of influence. And this is the same principle I talk about guys that are like trying to get into the industry, and they're like, well, what do I do? I'm like, well, you need more exposure with more people, and you need to give more value. And that giving of value is going to cause them to be like, oh, hey, you know what? There's this dude at this course I went to. He was really good. He was solid. He was taking initiative. Let me call him up when someone's like, yo, I need 5 more guys. Like, cattle call, and then all of a sudden your phone's ringing because you've been just like freely giving this value, and helping people out. And it just is, it's cyclical, and it's a very positive way to get ahead and to really achieve your dreams. It's like the cleanest way to do it. Right? Yeah, no, man, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think I could just piggy off that by saying, like, I find a little bit of pleasure in watching other people succeed. Yeah. And like I said, it's not like this holier than thou, like I'm trying to walk the earth like Kane from, Kung Fu. It's the reality is that I seriously, I know that if I'm improving the lives of other people to do good things with clients that I might not be privy to, that there's a good chance that some door might swing my way, in a sense that I might be connected with them to help them out as well. Because at the end of the day, like I've been very, very blessed to have a career that has spawned different ways. Like me even talking to you today is contributed to so many things that had workings years and years ago to get me to here. And I'm still like doing this. I still like what I'm doing. Have I thought about like doing other things? Sure. Who hasn't?
Yeah.
But I also know that this is what I've been kind of like geared and meant to be doing for the long term.
Yeah.
And then finding out how that works. And it's basically, it's like, it's who you know, not what you know.
Right.
And with that being said, it's like, well, if it's who you know, not what you know, you better know a lot in order to help them get to where they need to be. Because they're not going to do you any favors if they can't. And it's not like self-serving, but in a sense, it's like, it's a mutual beneficial relationship here, kind of like what we're doing right now. I'm happy as a client to be talking to you. And if we get to do it again sometime soon, then that's a plus for everybody, I think. Yeah. And so even like when it comes to the business side, it's with the business to business kind of angle. It's that if I'm able to improve their situation, they make a little bit more money. They get a little bit more exposure with clients that they probably couldn't before. And the kind of like the circular kind of cyclic way that you had mentioned about it is it all kind of comes back in certain ways, and not for the blessings of karma. It's just that's kind of the right thing to do, especially in our industry where, make no mistake about it, there's some folks out there that may or may not should be doing this type of line of work. And they might be in a way corrupting clients to have that type of that negative taste in the mouth that we talked about earlier, that you have to then re-engage to improve their situation and on and on and on and on. So again, it's not foolproof, but it's just something that I live by.
No, it works. It's actually in that book, Human Nature, and in 40 Laws of Power. It's just like, someone say it's a dirty reality, but it is not. It's 100% just reality. Reality is not good or bad, light or dark. It's reality. It's what you make it. But the reality is, the more relevant you can become to helping someone accomplish their mission, the more they're going to give you business, and the more positivity they're going to push your way. And it really isn't a karmic magic. It's like, I need to, half the reason I love psychology is because I need to understand this person, their motivations, so that, and then this is the clean part, I can create the most win-wins in the room. And if you can create the most win-wins in the room, you will be the most influential person in the room. And more people will help you work towards your goal because you are helping them work towards their goal. And, that's just the way to, win friends and influence people. You know what I'm saying? Boom! Like book number 3 or 4. Get that in your system. Right?
Number 3 right there in my list. I have to say, there's also like a comment, like it kind of couples on that. It's like you are the company that you keep. And if we're having like the best and brightest out there, even the aspiring best and brightest in the realm of doing this type of work, I mean, the EP, we're talking about like the EP industry, it's like the sky is bright, man. It's one of those things where we're having really great old stalwarts talking about the way they've done things and then kind of reapplying to how it is today with the young and up and coming bucks that are out there, and everyone in between having the ability to just kind of drive a philosophy of, accomplishing the mission, true welfare is second, and then anything after that is gravy, of course. So all roads lead back to the Marine Corps, I guess. Yeah,
man, they were right. They just figured it out a while ago, No, that's what's up. Well, dang, man, it's been good having you on here, Chris. No, I really, really appreciate your time, your perspective. Easy conversation, bro. Where can people find you? Where can they find you? What are you doing these days? Do you want to be found? What's up?
Yeah, great point. I love to be found on LinkedIn. You can find me by my name. Super easy. I'm trying to accrue a really great network of folks that do a lot of great things out there. And other than that, I'm a private guy. I've got a little bit of family-oriented Instagram that shows mostly my kids, and
that's what's up.
That's about that, and I'm not pushing a product. I'm not, trying to get out there and push anything. I love to be able to help, obviously, what you got going on as well, and clearly I'll be able to kind of retweet or retag things. Obviously, what we're doing today, and anyone that's out there that wants to reach out to strike up more conversation, and obviously Byron's your guy for that, and I'd be happy to help as well.
Absolutely, yeah, man. So solid. Thanks so much for your time, brother. It was good stuff, man. It was good stuff.
Man.
All right,
my pleasure.
Solid. We'll talk again soon. Out.
Boom. And to support this podcast, go to executiveprotectionlifestyle.com and contribute to our Patreon account. That Patreon account is what helps me make this podcast possible, contributing to this brand, what we're doing here, making it so that I can bring better guests on, making it so that we can plan more events and just expand the contribution to the private security industry, and also to making America a safer place by teaching people how to protect themselves and the mindset behind that, the lifestyle behind that. You guys are already killing it. $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month, whatever you can do that you know you would probably just lose in the mattress anyway or spend on McDonald's. Hey, you want to put it towards something that's going to good use, put it towards a podcast, and get involved in our Patreon account at executiveprotectionlifestyle.com. And if you want to find me, that's ByronRodgersMotivation.com. Do whatever you can, contribute whatever you can to that Patreon account, because it makes all of these things possible, ladies and gentlemen. So much love. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you for making those contributions. You guys rock. We're already doing amazing there, and it's just because of you guys. So thanks once again for those contributions. Boom. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode of Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast. This whole entire thing actually just started off as a Facebook group that blew up and is one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing, executive protection Facebook group online. So if you haven't joined the Facebook group, join the Facebook group. Follow us on Instagram and check us out at executiveprotectionlifestyle.com. If you want to find me, that's ByronRodgersMotivation.com, and I'm on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well. So until the next podcast, y'all, stay sharp out there. And as I say it, one mind, many weapons. Talk soon. Out.